Hello everyone, welcome to our audiobook channel. If you enjoy this story or want to hear more exciting content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your feedback helps us improve and bring even more captivating stories. Enjoy listening. Chapter 1, This World Isn't Right. Chapter 1, This World Isn't Right? Donghai was as hot as a furnace in June. The sky was azure blue, and not a cloud was in sight. The scorching sun burned furiously like a massive fireball as it hung high in the sky. Donghai No. 1 High School. 5:30 p.m. Ring, ring, ring. The bell signaling the end of the lesson rang. The entire school campus woke up from its stupor, and noises appeared from everywhere. A few seconds later, waves of students gushed out of the different classroom buildings. They smiled and chatted in their small groups while walking out of the school gates. "The weather is so hot today," someone complained angrily. "Brother Wang Teng, let's go to Wild Rose Pub for a drink tonight." A voice pulled Wang Teng back to reality. Suji. As he looked at the person in front of him, the familiar face and the distant memories surged out from the depth of his mind. This was one of his playmates when he was in senior high. "I won't be joining you tonight. I have a headache." "You can have fun," said Wang Teng. Suji replied hurriedly, "Hey, don't be like this. There aren't many people in our circle. If you don't come, it will be meaningless. Besides, we haven't gathered in a long while. Why don't we find another day to meet? How about tomorrow or the day after? What do you think?" Wang Teng shook his head helplessly. "Tomorrow is good. No problem. I will inform Little Wei and the rest that we will be gathering tomorrow instead." Suji smiled brightly. When they walked to the school gates, a huge commotion sounded in front of them. "Hey, what happened in front? There's a crowd there." Suji felt puzzled. "Let me take a look." He then ran forward and squeezed through the crowd to get to the front. Wang Teng, on the other hand, just placed his hands in his pockets and walked forward slowly. A few students saw him and voluntarily made way for him, afraid of provoking this guy. As expected, he, young Master Wang, had a powerful reputation. Wang Teng mocked himself silently. Unfortunately, it wasn't a good reputation. He walked out of the crowd and looked at the open space in front. A lady had managed to knock down a few gangsters with dyed hair. The thugs were lying on the ground and crying in pain. They had fear in their eyes when they looked at the young lady. From the discussions around him, Wang Teng had a basic understanding of what happened. He Man Rong encountered these gangsters after she ended her lessons. Finding her quite pretty, they teased her and said some nasty things to her. They thought that He Man Rong was just a weak and easily bullied lady, but unexpectedly, she was a rose with thorns. She attacked them angrily and beat them until they couldn't get up from the ground. Goddess, he is indeed an advanced stage martial disciple. These gangsters offended the wrong person. A male student beside Wang Teng was waving his fist around feverishly. Even the pimple on his face turned slightly red because of his excitement. From his words, he treated He Man Rong as his goddess. "I've heard that He Man Rong was a star student, but I didn't expect her to fight so well. Did she learn Taekwondo in the past? Has she achieved the legendary 9th degree black belt? Honestly speaking, it's rare to see such long legs. She's only a high school student, but her figure is already so good. Imagine how she will look in the future." Wang Teng was amazed at He Man Rong's valiance. Just as he was admiring the beauties in life, he suddenly heard the words "advanced stage martial disciple." The expression on his face froze. He was in a daze. "Did I hear wrong? That's right. I just got reborn, so it's normal to be a little absent-minded and mishear things." At this moment, Suji leaned over and said with jealousy, "We have 5 advanced stage martial disciples in our school. He Man Rong is the only female, and she comes from a common background to boot. She's really a genius. Wang Teng felt speechless. They were indeed talking about advanced stage martial disciples. He didn't hear wrong. He was reborn in modern society, so why did this interesting profession exist? What was going on? Was he really reborn? Wang Teng sensed the evil intentions of this world. His mind was filled with questions. Man Rong frowned slightly when she noticed the number of people she had attracted. In the end, she ignored the gangsters on the ground and left right away. The people crowding around also dispersed when she left the scene. Wang Teng and Suji parted ways at the school gates. Wang Teng found the car that came to fetch him from school as the other students stared at him in envy. He sat in the BMW parked at the side of the road, and it zoomed off. In the car, Wang Teng looked at the scenery flashing past outside. He was deep in thoughts. This was when he noticed that the trees growing along the roadside were exceptionally tall, big, and lush. These plants had too many nutrients. No wonder he felt something different when he was in school just now. The plants in school were exceptionally lush too. However, Wang Teng was immersed in the fact that he was reborn, so he didn't notice it. Everything Wang Teng saw on the road astounded him. The streets were clean and neat, the pedestrian style seemed ahead of time, and the country's economy was extremely prosperous. It didn't feel like 2009. It didn't feel like 2019 either, the year he was reborn. As expected, there was something different about this world. Wang Teng's mind was in a mess. He saw a pretty lady around 20 years old walking on the streets with a huge and fluffy dog on the leash. There was nothing wrong with this scene, but the dog was just too huge. It was as big as a calf. Wang Teng couldn't help but curse, "What the FK? What breed is this? Why is it so big?" He took a deep breath to calm his emotions. But then, he was dumbfounded again as he touched his chin. It looks like a golden retriever, but it's too big. He noticed a few more people walking their pets, and all of them were huge. Their sizes exceeded the typical dimensions of the animals. Some parents even let their children ride on the backs of the big dogs. The pet dogs became mounts. He also saw some pet cats with two tails. They were gigantic, too, looking like leopards. However, they were very obedient. Judging from the unsurprised reactions of the passers-by, they weren't treated like wild beasts. Wang Teng felt a little numb. This was definitely not his original world. Even though his classmates and school remained the same, some things were obviously different. The car drove for more than 20 minutes before arriving at the luxurious villa district. Fortunately, his home was still here. He came from a normal wealthy family. Wang Teng's grandfather had 4 children. His father, Wang Shenkuo, was the second child. He was a business talent, so he started his own business and built the Xinteng Group. This corporation was second to the corporation Wang Teng's grandfather founded, which was the Rongsheng Group. The Xinteng Group and the Rongsheng Group were both big businesses worth over 100 million. But, Wang Teng knew that there were many corporations like this in the world. His family might be considered wealthy in this area, but in front of the real global financial institutions, they were just tiny ants. In his past life, the Wang family had offended someone, resulting in the downfall of their business. They only managed to persevere for a few months before their company went bankrupt and closed. The Wang family collapsed and became a thing of the past. It sounded good to have 2 companies each worth more than 100 million. Yet, they were nothing in front of the really influential people. How ironic. Since then, Wang Teng's life took a huge turn. In the next few days, he basically lived a dog's life. He got humiliated and embarrassed all the time until he was reborn. Wait, he might not be reborn. This world had changed drastically, so he didn't know what the Wang family was like now. He wondered if his parents were still his parents. He hoped that when he opened the door, his parents wouldn't have changed. No way. It won't happen. Wang Teng comforted himself hurriedly. He felt agitated, so he took a few deep breaths before he stepped through the doors of the villa. Chapter 2, The Principles of Peaceful Coexistence with the Other World. Chapter 2, The Principles of Peaceful Coexistence with the Other World. In 2009, the villas in this expensive district cost 200,000 RMB per square meter. Wang Teng's family villa was 800 square meters big, and they had paid more than 10 million for it. Including the price of renovation, they spent more than 20 million in total. Upon entering the villa, the first thing visible was the spacious living room. At the moment, 2 maids were cleaning the place. Mother Wang, Li Xiaomei, was cooking in the kitchen. Li Xiaomei was born in a scholarly family. In university, she was famous because of her talent. However, she wasn't someone who couldn't step into the kitchen. Rather, she was a master at cooking. Wang Teng and his father were full of praises for her. That was why Li Xiaomei always cooked personally. She would make the dishes every day and wait for her husband and son to come back to eat. Looking at the hustling figure in the kitchen, Wang Teng could smell the familiar fragrance of the food from here. He stood at the door of the kitchen and opened his mouth several times. After a long while, he finally managed to make a sound. "Mom, I'm back." "You're back." Li Xiaomei turned around and smiled as she continued, "Let's wait for a while. Your dad should be back soon too. We can eat together after he returns." "Okay. Let me wash my face." Wang Teng rushed up the stairs instantly and dashed into the bathroom. "What's wrong with this child today?" Li Xiaomei shook her head. In the bathroom, Wang Teng turned the tap and splashed cold water on his face. He came back. He never thought that he would still have the chance to return to this family after 10 years. In the past, when the Wang family went downhill, someone conspired against Wang Shenkuo and had him murdered. Some time later, Li Xiaomei also died of grief. Wang Teng raised his head and wiped his face. He stared at his reflection in the mirror with slightly red eyes. Many things had changed in the past 10 years. Wang Teng changed. He was no longer who he was before. Now, he was able to remain calm and composed when facing different people and matters. But, in the corner of his heart, there were still a few soft spots that he didn't want to touch. Since he was reborn, his heart turned warm again. Wang Teng dried his face and walked out of the bathroom. He then located his bedroom with the help of his memory. The similar arrangements, everything was so familiar. NBA stars posters were pasted on the wall, and there were piles of audio CDs and novels on the bookshelf. The study table was below the window while the bed was next to it. There was a computer on the table. It was a new model of Apple. The bright silver frame was light and trendy. This was another item that didn't fit the timeline. Wang Teng suddenly thought of something when he saw the computer. As expected, he found a cell phone in his bag. However, it wasn't an antique from 2009, it was the latest iPhone 8. He was mentally prepared, though. He entered the passcode and opened his cell phone. Wang Teng felt fortunate that he wasn't good at remembering passwords. He had used the same password for many years without changing it, which became useful now. Food delivery apps, WeChat, Douyin, many apps in his phone belonged to the future. They didn't exist in 2009. When he was reborn, he wanted to use his memories to create a bright future for himself. He would conquer the hearts of future bosses like Jack Ma. Fine, he had no chance now. He sighed and put down his phone. Wang Teng then turned on his computer. There was no fastest method than searching online. Since the computer and cell phone technology was so advanced, it would be unreasonable for the internet to be stuck in 2009. Technology and the internet were inseparable. Wang Teng was a little surprised after he turned his computer on. The operating system wasn't Windows 10. Instead, it was already the 11th generation. So far, the advancement timeline here wasn't the same as in 2019. There were some differences here and there. He had to spend some time before he got familiar with this world. Wang Teng opened the Baidu browser and searched the two words martial warriors. A huge amount of information sprung up. More than an hour later, Wang Teng closed the browser and leaned back on his chair. He was in disbelief. 30 years ago, multiple dimensional rifts appeared in the world. The rifts are linked to an alternate world, Xinguo continent. Force exists in the Xinguo continent. Everyone there can become martial warriors by using this force to cultivate. Martial warriors are formidable. Low-rank martial warriors can break metals, split rocks, and divide a stream of water into two using their blades. High-rank martial warriors can move and destroy mountains, cut the sea into two. This is like a fantasy. Wang Teng was speechless. The scientist on Earth had done some research on the force and discovered that it might be dark matter. But, why were the humans and plants on Xinguo continent able to absorb the dark matter to change their body structure? Why weren't the living creatures on Earth able to do the same? The scientist couldn't find the answer to these questions. After some time, along with the appearance of the dimensional rifts, the Earth started to change. The living creatures on Earth were affected by dark matter. The plants became taller and lusher, and some extinct species reappeared on Earth. Animals started to grow in size too. The special characteristics on their bodies, for instance, scales, claws, and teeth, were enhanced accordingly. Some gifted creatures even managed to mutate and obtain special element ability. As the masters of the Earth, humans also followed suit. Their bodies became stronger. They were able to run faster, jump higher, have more strength, and live longer. The elderlies who were around 70 to 80 years old 30 years ago were still alive. Despite being more than 100 years old now, their physical and mental state remained the same as 30 years ago. Humans went berserk. The different countries disregarded their previous enmity and organized a global conference. In the end, they decided to organize a team to investigate and explore the dimensional rifts. After confirming that they were safe, they sent the army and different specialists into the Xinguo continent. These people were known as the pioneers. Xinguo continent was endless. The pioneers claimed that they came from the other side of the sea and gained the locals' trust. Afterward, they started interacting and trading with them. The people on Earth didn't ruthlessly invade the Xinguo continent. Instead, they adopted the principles of peaceful coexistence and interacted with the locals there amiably. After some time, the pioneers came back with the cultivation methods from Xinguo continent. After some trials and errors, humans on Earth were able to cultivate. The countries came to a common consensus and made the cultivation methods public. Henceforth, it was the dawn of a new martial arts era. This was a huge reform. History took a sharp turn and moved in an unpredictable direction. We have come to the most important part. Please do take note. Humans were powerful because they had intelligence. Through cultivation, the human race quickly grew stronger. Within a few short years, a considerable number of martial warriors started to appear around the world. Some joined the army, while others entered the government. Some belonged to various financial institutions and elite families. All in all, these people formed an alliance. However, a small portion of the civilian martial warriors preferred freedom. They set up various martial arts schools to provide a way for other civilians to start their cultivation. Due to the presence of these martial warriors, humans were able to keep the mutated and powerful wild beasts out of the city. This prevented massive damage and impact on society. However, becoming a martial warrior required talent. It wasn't a path everyone could pursue. If someone wanted to become an official martial warrior, they needed to toughen their body and build a solid foundation. Cultivators at this stage were known as martial disciples. They would only be able to absorb the force and store it in their body if their foundation was strong enough. Then, they would become an official martial warrior. If force was compared to water, the body would be akin to a vessel collecting the water. The process of absorbing the force was the same as pouring water into a vessel. The bigger and sturdier the vessel was, the more water it could hold. The principle of cultivation could be explained simply like this. Based on the martial disciple's strength, speed, and overall ability, they could be classified into 3 categories: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. He Man Rong was an advanced stage martial disciple. She was only a step away from becoming a martial warrior. This was the step that stumped many people. There was a stark difference between people who could absorb the force and those who couldn't. An official martial warrior who was able to cultivate using the force was able to easily tackle 10 advanced stage martial disciples who couldn't absorb the force. On the surface, though, only one step separated an advanced stage martial disciple and an official martial warrior. As the saying goes, the poor study while the wealthy learn martial arts. Copious amounts of resources were required to cultivate the martial path. Naturally, they cost money, so ordinary people were at a disadvantage. On the whole, martial warriors only made up a small proportion of humans. Most people were just slightly stronger human beings. But, this didn't stop martial warriors from becoming the mainstream. On the other hand, the rarity of martial warriors and their importance gave them their important status. Chapter 3, Starting My Bugged Life Now. Chapter 3, Starting My Bugged Life Now. 7 p.m. Wang Teng's family finally sat down together to have their dinner. Your father was halfway home when something cropped up at work again. He had to go back, so he was delayed by more than an hour. Can't you go back after you finish your dinner? Li Xiaomei complained as she placed some food in Wang Teng's bowl. Wang Teng was holed up in his room for more than an hour. He also forgot about his dinner, but fortunately, his father was late because of work. It was an emergency. I had to go back and take care of it first, Wang Shenqiu replied helplessly. Let's ignore your father. His mind is always fixed on his stupid company. Li Xiaomei rolled her eyes at Wang Shenqiu. Wang Teng smiled. When he was in high school, his relationship with his father was a little tense. Wang Shenqiu had great hope for his child, so naturally, he was strict. However, Wang Teng was in his rebellious phase, and he didn't study well. Thus, the conflict between him and his father got more intense. Thinking back on it, Wang Teng felt that his actions were really childish in the past. On the dining table, Wang Teng and Wang Shenqiu were quieter as compared to Li Xiaomei. She placed food in Wang Teng's bowl and chatted with the father and son. Wang Teng enjoyed this atmosphere. Wang Shenqiu had a short conversation with Wang Teng. He was mostly concerned with his studies. Wang Teng's replies were quite standard. He wasn't as childish as before, and he didn't throw tantrums or smash his chopsticks. Wang Shenqiu was pleasantly surprised. He felt that his son was different today, but he didn't overthink. After finishing his dinner, Wang Shenqiu left the house in a hurry. As the boss of a huge company, he had many things to settle every day. Most of the time, he could only sleep for 4 to 5 hours daily. Wang Teng informed his mother before leaving the house too. He rushed straight to the Jixin Marshall house. A yellow sports car zoomed along the streets in the night, its loud engine catching the attention of many passers-by. Most of the cars today used the force as their source of energy. Fuel had long been eliminated. The force was more environmentally friendly and cheaper. The pioneers didn't just bring back the methods of cultivation from the Xingu continent. They also brought back many new technologies. The force rune was one of them. By combining the technologies from the Xingu continent and the Earth, the force technology was born. From then, cars started to use the force. Later on, computers and phones also shifted to the newly invented force runes chip and batteries. They worked faster and could last longer. Half an hour later, Wang Teng parked the car outside the martial arts school. Based on the information he found, Jixin Martial House was one of China's top 3 martial arts academies. The principal of this school was a 12-star general rank martial warrior. He was ranked among the top 5 warriors in China. Worldwide, he was ranked among the top 20. There were different ranks for martial warriors. 1-star to 9-star were soldiers, 10-star was brigadier general, 11-star was low-tier general, 12-star was general, 13-star was high-tier general. From this, one could tell how powerful the principal of the Jixin Martial House was. The headquarters of the Jixin Martial House was in capital Xia, with its branches spreading over the big cities in China. They had a lot of martial warriors in their employment and had given birth to many powerful people. The Donghai branch of the Jixin Martial House was situated beside the sea. In the dark, it looked like a huge wild beast lying prone. The land mass it covered was comparable to a high school. The martial arts academy's main gate was wide enough for 5 cars to drive through side by side. It was grandeur and magnificent to say the least. There was a huge rock erected in the middle of the main gate. The words Jixin Martial House, Donghai Branch were written conspicuously in gold. When he reached the sentry box, a few guards carrying guns walked to his car. Routine inspection, please cooperate. Wang Teng lowered his car window and nodded. Then, he got out of his car. The guards inspected the interior of the car and used the scanner to check Wang Teng's body. The whole process was done very carefully. At the same time, Wang Teng also sized up the guards. They wore black protective vests and had large caliber machine guns in their hands. Just their menacing looks and sophisticated gear was enough to frighten the onlookers. There were force runes carved on the machine guns, signifying that they were force machine guns. They were 10 times more powerful than their normal counterparts. Even if an official martial warrior got hit by them, he would be crippled. After the inspection, the guards let him in. Wang Teng parked the car properly and walked along the paths in the martial arts academy. It was already past 8 p.m., but the place was brightly lit. Plenty of students could be seen on the roads and the grasses. There was no lack of people training at night. Every second counted when you were training to become a martial warrior. Being talented was the basic criteria. One still needed to work hard to achieve progress on his cultivation journey. There were 3 tall and huge buildings in the martial arts academy. With their silver-white color with distinctive characteristics, it was easy to spot them. The one in the middle was the administrative building. It was rectangular in shape and 100 meters in height. It stabbed straight into the clouds like a spear. At the tip, there was a strange half-circle. On the left was the martial disciple teaching building, while the right one was the martial disciple training building. These 2 buildings looked like 2 huge round balls. They weren't tall, though, only having 3 floors, but they were extremely spacious. By rough estimate, they were 2 times bigger than Donghai No. 1 High School Stadium. The placements of these 3 buildings made Wang Teng suspect that this was the work of the principal's poor sense of humor. Wang Teng had done his homework, so he ran towards the administrative building without hesitation. Under the staff's guidance, he registered himself as a martial disciple and went to the martial disciple teaching building. The martial arts academy would only accept students between the age of 16 and 30. This was to prevent wastage of resources. Wang Teng was merely 17 years old, so age wasn't a problem for him. The noise in the teaching building struck him the second he walked into the building. The first floor was where beginner disciples trained. Beginner disciples were beginner stage martial disciples, and there were more than 3,000 beginner stage martial disciples in the Jixin Martial House. On the first floor, all the students were cultivating on their own. It looked extremely lively. The second Wang Teng entered the main lobby, he froze on the spot. What did he see? Around 50 transparent bubbles were floating above the ground. Strength *1. Speed * 3. Physique * 1. Enlightenment * 0.5. Strength * 2. Wang Teng blinked. He blinked again. The bubbles were still there, but the other students in the lobby couldn't see them. This was his special skill. He wasn't sure, so he pulled a student that was walking past. "What do you want?" The student was around 17 years old. He glanced at Wang Teng irritatedly with a "why are you more handsome than me" expression. "Brother, your floor it's paved really nicely," Wang Teng pointed to the floor and said. The transparent bubbles were floating at the height of his calves. He could see them just by lowering his head. The student ignored the bubbles and replied impatiently, "Of course. This is the best rubber flooring. There are force runes carved in it that can minimize vibration, last longer, and have many other functions. Where do you come from? Don't you have common sense?" The student flicked his hand and walked away without looking back. Wang Teng touched his chin. From the person's reaction, he obviously couldn't see the bubbles. That meant that he was the only person who could see them. The students walked around the training area, some going through the bubbles. To them, the bubbles didn't exist. Wang Teng moved closer to the bubble nearest to him to test if he could walk through it. The instant he touched it, the bubble disappeared. His vision blurred for a moment, and a transparent board popped out. Enlightenment, 18. Physique, 41. Strength, 50, +1. Speed, 32. Wang Teng's heart palpitated as he stared at the transparent board. He felt as though his heart was going to jump out of his throat. This was exhilarating. Wang Teng felt that he wouldn't be so excited even if he struck 100 million lottery. He couldn't control himself. This must be a bug. In this era where martial warriors were the mainstream, becoming stronger was the only path to success. His bug allowed him to collect attributes from other people and turn them into his own. This was heaven-defying. Other people had to cultivate diligently while he only had to pick up attributes. Wang Teng saw an unobstructed path to success in front of him. One day, he would go straight to the top of the world. Chapter 4, I'd rather die than practice the 9th set of radio exercises. Chapter 4, I'd rather die than practice the 9th set of radio exercises. At first, Wang Teng had come to the Jixin martial house to cultivate. But now, he was busy picking up attributes. He felt like a rubbish collector, working hard to pick up what others dropped. He observed the bubbles for some time and noticed that the transparent bubbles on the ground were dropped during the disciples' cultivation process. Many students were practicing in the martial arts academy, so quite a few attribute bubbles had dropped. One thing made Wang Teng's heart ache, though. There was a time limit for the existence of the bubbles. They would disappear after a few minutes. Just now, when he was in a daze, a few bubbles had already disappeared. He felt a pang of pain in his heart, as if he had lost a few 100 million. The disciples continued practicing, attribute bubbles kept dropping. As Wang Teng collected the bubbles happily, his attributes started surging. When an instructor saw him running around the arena aimlessly, he couldn't take it anymore. He called him loudly. "Hey, student, why are you not practicing diligently? Why are you running around?" "Teacher, this is my first day, so I'm looking at how other people practice. As the saying goes, there's something you can learn from everyone. I'm learning things from other people first." Wang Teng looked at the instructor and smiled as he spouted nonsense. "Today is your first day? Come over here. I will teach you the 9th set of radio exercises first. Since you don't know anything now, you won't be able to understand what they are doing. Lay your foundations first," said the instructor. Wang Teng thought for a moment and felt that the instructor made sense. This guy was quite responsible. He looked at the attribute bubbles that had just dropped in the training lobby. The feeling of losing a few 100 million struck him again. "Teacher, What kind of exercise is the ninth set of radio exercises? Wang Teng walked over and asked curiously. It is a set of exercises created by the country to train your body scientifically. It uses the basic physical training exercises from the Xinghua continent. The instructor turned to the sound system after he finished speaking. The ninth set of radio exercises, martial spirit, starts now. Wang Teng froze. He could recognize the music. The starting actions were familiar too. Watch carefully. The instructor was taller than 1.8 m, and his muscles were bulging out of his shirt. It was frightening, yet he was getting ready diligently. Wang Teng was stunned. The instructor started doing the exercises along with the music. The first stance, stretching exercise. 1 2 3 4, 2 2 3 4. The second stance, chest expansion exercise. 1 2 3 4, 2 2 3 4. The third stance, kicking exercise. 1 2 3 4, 2 2 3 4. Wang Teng looked at the instructor in astonishment as many crows flew past his mind uncontrollably. He was speechless. Oh my God! The names of the exercises were the same as the radio exercises he knew in the past, but the actions were more complicated. Some of them even had high physical demands. It seemed like the exercises could truly train one's physique. But, this music, this tempo, and this familiar feeling were really embarrassing. How is it? Have you seen everything? If you didn't, I could show you again. The music stopped, and the instructor slowly ended the exercise. He let out a long sigh. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead and his body. The effects of the ninth set of radio exercises were astounding. Instructor, I saw everything clearly. Wang Teng nodded in a hurry. He was really afraid that the instructor would do it again. Looking at his unsatisfied expression, the guy might really do it again. He wasn't kidding. Oh, it looks like your memory is not bad. I had to watch it 3 times before I managed to memorize it, the instructor said with disappointment. Why do you look so disappointed? How can you get addicted to a radio exercise? Wang Teng sent the instructor off with all his might by persuading him to harm other students. After all, they would be delighted to listen to him. I will never practice the ninth set of radio exercises. I will never do it even if I die. I will only rely on picking up attributes to become stronger. When the instructor wasn't looking at him, Wang Teng continued his collection business. Speed *1. Enlightenment *0.2. Basic fist skill *5. Wang Teng was thrilled. He had picked many strength and speed attributes, but he hadn't tested them. Hence, he didn't know where his strength was at. However, while running around, Wang Teng felt his speed increasing. He accidentally dashed a few meters further than expected. There weren't many enlightenment attributes. Most of them were less than 1 point, so they only added up to 1 point. Will I become smarter if my enlightenment attribute increases? Why don't I feel anything? Wang Teng thought to himself. Wait. Basic fist skill *5. Wang Teng had absorbed an attribute bubble that he never saw before. Suddenly, memories of him practicing fist skills, which didn't exist earlier, appeared in his mind. I've learned the basic fist skill. Wang Teng was in disbelief. As martial disciples couldn't absorb the force, they weren't able to practice force battle techniques. Hence, the country summarized many basic fighting skills, including footwork, fist skills, sword skills, blade skills, etc. They popularized the skills and allowed everyone to practice them. Wang Teng looked at the 20-years-old youth who was practicing the basic fist skill not far away from him, and his eyes lit up. Although he had learned the basic fist skill, he wasn't well versed in it. He just knew it roughly like an ordinary person who had practiced it for 5 days. Was he able to increase his proficiency if he collected more basic fist skill attributes? Bang, bang, bang. The young man punched the sandbag forcefully, swinging it right and left. Every punch formed a dent in the sandbag. Amazing. Indeed, you can only be successful if you become a martial warrior. Why isn't it dropping? Hey, it dropped. It dropped again. Wang Teng was feeling over the top. He secretly crept in from the back and picked up the attribute silently. Then, he sneaked away. Basic fist skill *7. Strength *5. This young man is amazing. He's good. Wang Teng exclaimed. The proficiency of his basic fist skill had increased once more. He waited for a while, but the other party didn't drop any more attribute bubbles. Wang Teng had no choice but to turn his attention to the other students. He mustn't neglect the other attributes while waiting for this one. Only children made decisions. Adults took everything. He, Wang Teng, was an adult. Basic footwork *2. There was a running track outside the training lobby. It was like a stadium. A fat man was dashing across the track like a gust of wind. Standing by the side, Wang Teng's hair flew up. Still, a bubble dropped from the fat man. This was an agile fatty. Huh? Basic footwork. Wang Teng was astounded when he picked up the attribute bubble. This was another basic technique. He was really lucky today. As the fat man kept running assiduously, bubbles dropped behind him like a hen laying eggs. So many bubbles. Wang Teng was flabbergasted. He didn't want to waste anything, so he ran behind the fatty and collected the bubbles. The speed attributes he had collected earlier started showing its effects now. Wang Teng was able to follow behind the fatty without breaking a sweat. Basic footwork *3. Ha, 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 why are you following me? The fatty stopped and glared at Wang Teng while sticking out his tongue. No one is following you. I'm just practicing my footwork. Don't flatter yourself. Wang Teng glared back at him. You. What about me? Damn it, I'm not running anymore. You can run alone. The fatty was frustrated, but he couldn't do anything to Wang Teng. Hey, don't do that. You can run a few more rounds. I think that you have a bright future. Don't give up easily. Wang Teng immediately persuaded the fatty with all his heart. The fatty. Chapter 5, Wang Teng, am very hard-working. Chapter 5, Wang Teng, am very hard-working. 11 p.m. The night was getting dark. Wang Teng left the Jixin martial house unwillingly. The other students had trained for the entire night, but he fooled around the whole time. Fooled around. How could he say that he was fooling around when it was about martial warriors? The martial disciples left in batches, and Wang Teng was among the last batch. It wasn't because he was very hard-working. He just didn't want to miss any attribute bubble. Well, this was a kind of hard work too. Wang Teng drove on the empty road. Enlightenment, 19.3. Physique, 47. Strength 135. Speed, 86. Battle techniques, basic fist skill, basic understanding, basic footwork, basic understanding. Glancing at the attributes panel, Wang Teng felt content. From single digit to the current double digits and 3 digits, it was an undeniably huge change. His strength and speed had increased the most. On the other hand, his enlightenment and physique were on the low side. It wasn't hard to notice that each attribute had a different probability of dropping. The greatest surprise today was the basic fist skill and the basic footwork. To become a martial warrior, having a tough body wasn't enough. He needed to learn battle techniques so that he could display his true potential. I will go to the martial arts academy again tomorrow to test how far I can go. Wang Teng thought to himself. When he returned home, Li Xiaomei had already prepared dinner. Wang Shenkuo was eating. He frowned and asked, "It's late. Where did you go?" "The Jixin martial house, Wang Teng replied casually. Then, he said to Li Xiaomei, Mom, did you make egg noodles? Did you leave some for me? I'm hungry. Of course, I left some for you. Li Xiaomei was elated that her son loved her cooking. Slurp. Wang Teng took the bowl and sat down beside Wang Shenqiu, taking huge bites of the noodles. It was incredibly delicious. Not smelling alcohol on Wang Teng's body, Wang Shenqiu's eyebrows relaxed a little. He asked with surprise, why did you go to the martial arts academy? To practice martial arts, Wang Teng replied without raising his head. Practice martial arts. Wang Shenqiu and Li Xiaomei were flabbergasted. They exchanged glances with each other before turning to look at Wang Teng in unplanned unison. They had tried persuading Wang Teng in the past, but he was too pampered. He didn't want to learn, so he didn't take their words to heart. Yet, he voluntarily went to practice martial arts today. Son, you want to practice martial arts? Li Xiaomei asked in disbelief. That's right. Wang Teng nodded. Son, are you dating? Li Xiaomei followed up curiously. Huh? Wang Teng was stunned. When did he start dating? He didn't even know that he was dating. You hated practicing martial arts in the past, said Wang Shenqiu. What's wrong with that? I've sorted out my thoughts, so naturally, I want to start practicing. Wang Teng gave a relaxed expression as he replied. Was it really so simple? Wang Shenqiu and Li Xiaomei glanced at each other again. All right, since you want to learn martial arts, I will hire the best teacher to teach you. Wang Shenqiu could sense that Wang Teng wasn't joking, so he clapped his hands happily. Dad, you don't have to do that. Martial arts require talent. I want to practice on my own and give it a try. Wang Teng directly rejected his father. How could a teacher be compared to his bug? His father was only able to hire an advanced stage martial disciple as his teacher. Based on his family background, they couldn't hire a martial warrior. He would rather spend time picking up attributes than learning from an advanced stage martial disciple. It would be a waste of money and resources. This was the martial era. Even hiring an advanced stage martial disciple wasn't cheap. Wang Shenqiu didn't force his son. He nodded and said, okay, there are instructors in the martial arts academy too. As one of the top 3 martial arts academies in China, their instructors won't be bad. Practice properly. I don't hope that you can become a martial warrior. If you're able to become an advanced stage martial disciple, your physical quality will improve tremendously, and your lifespan will increase too. Health is wealth. With a good body, you can get twice the result with half the effort. Actually, he was afraid that Wang Teng's passion wouldn't last long. He might give up after 2 days of suffering. Thus, it was better to let him practice on his own for a period. If he could persevere, they could make more plans later. I understand. Wang Teng smiled secretly. His father loved to educate him. In the past, he wouldn't listen to his father. But an advanced stage martial disciple. He had a bug. Not mentioning an official martial warrior, he might even be able to become a general stage martial warrior. He was just afraid that he would scare his father if he told him the truth. On the other side, Wang Shenqiu felt content in his heart. He thought that Wang Shenqiu had matured. Was he dating? Son, you're already 17 years old. If you are really dating, we won't object. Do you have enough pocket money? Wang Teng was puzzled. Why couldn't they stop talking about this topic? Dad, Mom, I'm really not dating. If I have a girlfriend, I'll tell you immediately. Wang Teng was speechless. What a pity. Li Xiaomei felt disappointed. Wang Shenqiu nodded in agreement. Wang Teng said helplessly, Mom, I'm only 17 years old. Why are you sighing? You're not young anymore. We are allowed to get the marriage certificate at 18 years old. If you start dating now, you can cultivate your relationship for a year and get married after that, Li Xiaomei said. Get married at 18 years old. Wang Teng was dumbstruck. Was the martial arts era so loving? Mom, I've finished eating. I will wash up and go to sleep. He dashed upstairs as though he was running away from his parents. He was afraid that if he talked to his mother for a while longer, she might start talking about his future children. This was how his mother was like. This child. Hubby, I feel that the young miss of the Tang family is not bad. Let's visit her family another day and ask them. Li Xiaomei was still chatting with Wang Shenqiu on the first floor. Fortunately, Wang Teng didn't hear them. If he did, he might have peed in his pants out of shock. The young miss of the Tang family was at least 100 kilograms. The next day, Wang Shenqiu was eating breakfast bright and early in the morning. Steamed buns, fried dough, soy milk, these were all simple dishes, but they were the favorites of the people in China. Wang Teng came downstairs. It was Saturday, so he didn't need to go to school. He could make his own arrangements. After he finished breakfast, Wang Teng bid farewell to his parents and rushed out of the door. Wang Shenqiu felt relieved again. He said to Li Xiaomei, buy some star beast meat. Little Teng is practicing martial arts. Eating some star beast meat can help him improve his physique. Jixin Martial House. Wang Teng came really early. There were only a few students in the training lobby at the moment. Clearly, these people were remarkably hard-working. As early risers, they were all surprised to see a new face. However, Wang Teng's diligence earned their approval as the students nodded at him politely. They felt that he was the same kind of person as them. Wang Teng found himself very hard-working, too, but unfortunately, not many people came to practice so early. Hence, there were few bubbles to pick today. He went to greet the students and picked up the attributes along the way. Yes, he just did it because it was along the way. I, Wang Teng, am a polite person. My main purpose is to greet them. Basic fist skill *6. Strength *4. Basic sword skill *4. Wow, there was an array of attributes. There were also basic fist skills and basic sword skills for him to pick up. He had learned another basic battle technique. As expected, the early bird catches the worm. The disciples were all talented, and they were very polite. Even more, they dropped many attributes for him. Wang Teng really liked them. Chapter 6, I'm not incompetent. Chapter 6, I'm not incompetent. Wang Teng soon finished picking up the attribute bubbles. He knew that the other students wouldn't drop any more bubbles for some time, so he ran to a corner. There were a few inspection devices placed over there: strength inspection device, speed indicator device, and physique inspection device. This was all equipment used to test the physical conditions of the martial disciples. They were more accurate with minimal error. Wang Teng stopped in front of the strength inspection device first. He had learned the basic fist skill, so he knew how to exert his strength properly. Other people would need at least a month to learn this. Even a genius would need around 10 days. Yet, Wang Teng only used a month. To him, it was only a few attribute bubbles. This was the shortest time to learn the skill in the world. It was so short that other people didn't even dare to imagine it. Wang Teng slowly got into posture and took a deep breath. He then closed his eyes, relaxing his body. Suddenly, he opened his eyes wide. He fixed his gaze in front of him, as though he was looking at his prey. Then, he moved. He stepped firmly on the ground and slightly moved his waist. His backbone tightened like a bow as he attacked with his fist. Bang! Wang Teng's fist slammed the strength inspection device. The number on display started jumping violently before it finally stopped. It was 143 kg. Yesterday, when he went home at night, his strength attribute was at 135 points. Just now, He had picked up 8 points, coming to a total of 143 points. This was the same as the number on the device. His strength had reached the limit of a normal person. It was worth noting that it was a normal person's limit. A human in a desperate situation was able to go beyond his limits. However, it was hard for an ordinary person to do that. In fact, it was exceedingly difficult. Thinking back, his initial strength was at 50, which was the strength of a normal person. Fortunately, I'm not incompetent. Wang Teng consoled himself. Then, he went to the speed indicator and stood on it. The speed indicator looked like a running machine. When a person ran on it, the wheels below would start spinning, and the person's speed would be calculated. Wang Teng started with a light jog. Then, he increased his speed until he hit his peak. The speed indicator device would display the runner's fastest speed. Wang Teng felt that he had already reached his limit, so he slowed down gradually and stepped down from the device. He looked at the number on the indicator, 12.7 m/s. It was obvious that the speed and the attribute points didn't rise equally. Wang Teng wasn't interested in how these two aspects were connected, though. It was just a different formula. Nonetheless, Wang Teng was still astounded by his own speed just now. This was the speed of the Olympics 100-meter sprint champion, right? If the body of a martial disciple was already like this, how scary was a martial warrior? Let's look at my physique. The physique inspection device looked like a hibernation chamber in a fantasy movie. It stood erected in a corner. Wang Teng walked in and pressed the start button. A ray of light scanned his body from his head to toe a few times. The physique inspection consisted of an examination of the blood, muscles, bones, meridians, and other elements. It was extremely complex, requiring advanced technology. Ding. The scan has ended. Student Wang Teng. Physique 47. A pleasant female voice resounded from the physique inspection device. Tisk, tisk, there is even a voice broadcast system. Wang Teng was amazed at how high quality the speed indicator device and physique inspection device were. He wondered to himself. My physique is 47, the same as my physique attribute points. It seems like only the speed attribute is different. He glanced at the levels of martial disciple chart hung on the wall at the side. The standard strength of a beginner stage martial disciple was 100 kg to 300 kg. The speed was 9 to 7 seconds for 100 meters, meaning 11.11 m/s to 14.28 m/s. Lastly, the physique was between 30 to 50. As evident, Wang Teng was already a beginner stage martial disciple. He was satisfied with this result. Why shouldn't he be satisfied? Did he think that he could rise to the top in a single day? He had already saved much time in upgrading from a normal human to a beginner stage martial disciple. One needed to learn to be content. I will aim to become an intermediate stage martial disciple today. Wang Teng was filled with excitement as he decided to stay in the training lobby the entire day. He wasn't going anywhere. The other students were all practicing on their own, concentrating on their training. They didn't notice Wang Teng's test result. After all, this was the first time they had met. It was impolite to peek at others' abilities. While Wang Teng was doing his test just now, a few more attribute bubbles had dropped beside the students. Wang Teng's eyes lit up. He pretended to walk past them unintentionally and picked up the attributes. Basic Sword Skill *3. Enlightenment *0.6. Speed *2. Not bad, not bad. There's enlightenment to collect, and I've almost completed my basic sword skill. Wang Teng was secretly jumping with joy. Since there were too few people at the moment, Wang Teng didn't want to be too conspicuous and garner everyone's attention. He walked into the weapons room and looked around. There were many weapons on the shelves, including swords, blades, spears, halberd, rods, hammers, and many more. Each weapon had its subcategories too. For instance, for swords, there were long swords, short swords, soft swords, double swords, and such. There were all kinds of weapons on display here, and one could find whatever they fancied. No matter how unpopular the student's weapon was, they would find it in the weapons room. Wang Teng stood in front of the shelf with the swords and observed for some time. Eventually, he selected a black soft sword from the Dark Shadow series. As martial arts became mainstream, the weapons industry started developing too. After all, weapons were extremely important to a martial warrior. In a duel, a martial warrior with a powerful weapon had an advantage over a martial warrior without any weapons. However, the weapons provided to the martial disciples were all dummies. The quality was barely satisfactory, and no runes were engraved on it. This metal sword from the Dark Shadow series was entirely black. Its pattern and weight were the same as the real sword, but there were no occult runes on it. If you really wanted to compare, the cost of manufacturing this sword was only a few $100s. On the other hand, it cost a few $100,000 to make the real sword. The difference was huge. Wang Teng weighed the black metal sword in his hand. It felt just right. Men had an inclination and yearning for all kinds of weapons. Many people probably dreamed of carrying a sword and challenging the pugilistic world. In his past life, Wang Teng was in a technological society without any martial arts. Hence, he had no chance to get in touch with martial arts. Now, as he looked at the long sword in his hand, he felt as excited as a predator looking at its prey. He had collected some basic sword skill attributes, so he had a rudimentary understanding of the sword. As it was still early, not many people had arrived for training. Considering the lack of bubbles to collect, Wang Teng made use of this time to test the power of his basic sword skill. He walked out of the weapons room and found an empty spot. After focusing and getting into the posture, he started practicing his sword skill based on his memory. Slash, slash, slash. When he waved his sword, he could hear the sound of it cutting the air. If he hit someone with it, the other party would definitely be injured or dead. Among the students, the young man who had provided the basic sword skill attributes was practicing his sword skill too. He was stunned when he saw Wang Teng carrying a sword out of the room. He slowed down his actions and watched Wang Teng from afar. He's just a novice. The youth observed Wang Teng for a few seconds before shaking his head. Then, he ignored him. This isn't difficult. I familiarized myself with it after 2 rounds. My enlightenment is just 19.32. It isn't high. Wang Teng stopped and wondered to himself in shock. He didn't know that his 19.3 points of enlightenment had already exceeded an average human. That was why he didn't find it difficult to learn basic skills. If he was learning a force battle technique, it wouldn't be so simple. Force battle techniques were related to the use of the force. It was already a complicated and profound skill in itself. People with low enlightenment would have a hard time getting their heads around it. Thus, it could be deduced that practicing martial arts truly relied on one's talent. If you wanted to become a martial warrior, you needed to be a genius. Chapter 7, Collect the Wool. Chapter 7, Collect the Wool. After practicing sword skills for some time, Wang Teng placed the sword back in the weapons room. He then focused on his fist skill. The student practicing sword skills shook his head when he saw this. Martial arts relied on quality, not quantity. It was better for Wang Teng to choose one skill instead of practicing 2 skills for a short time. In the end, he wouldn't be skilled in either. This newbie is hard-working, but he's a little stupid. Wang Teng didn't know that someone had called him stupid in his heart. Even though he practiced his sword skill only a few times, he felt that his understanding had increased a little. The results were not bad. He turned around and saw the tall and muscular figure standing at the side with his arms crossed in front of his chest. It looked like he had been standing there for a while. "Teacher, when did you arrive?" Why didn't you say something? You frightened me. This was the instructor who had taught Wang Teng the ninth set of radio exercises yesterday evening. Now, he was staring at Wang Teng so intently that he felt goosebumps on his head. Young man, I have been watching you for a while. Your fist skill is not bad. The instructor gave Wang Teng a thumbs up. Thank you for your compliment. Wang Teng felt embarrassed. He continued, Teacher, I'm Wang Teng. How do I address you? My name is Peng Hai. You don't have to call me a teacher. You can just call me Senior Brother Peng, said Peng Hai. Senior Brother Peng. Wang Teng reacted naturally. Then, he asked, do you always come so early? I'm not talented. I'm 20 plus years old, but I'm still merely an advanced stage martial disciple. I can only work harder. Peng Hai was a little upset. For an instant, Wang Teng didn't know what to say. Ha ha ha, there's no need to feel awkward. I'm just running my mouth. Wang Teng, you are smart. As long as you work hard, I believe that you will become a martial warrior within 3 years. All the best, Peng Hai encouraged him. 3 years. No, 3 days was enough. This was what Wang Teng thought. But on the surface, he just nodded and replied, Senior Brother Peng, I will work hard. Okay, I will be going to the 3rd floor for my practice. There will be another advanced stage martial disciple in charge of guiding you today. Of course, if you have any questions, you can come and look for me, said Peng Hai. What a devoted senior brother! Wang Teng exclaimed when he saw him walking up the 3rd floor. More and more students had started arriving now, making the scene lively. Senior brother. Good morning, senior brother. Senior sister, you look beautiful today. Friends greeted each other before starting their personal training. Time was precious for everyone, so they couldn't afford to waste a single second. Wang Teng stared at the students and suddenly felt that they looked like sheep walking on 2 legs. There was an endless amount of fur on their bodies. Great. The corners of Wang Teng's lips lifted slightly, and he gave a fatherly smile. Once the sheep were fat enough, he could kill them. Wait, he mustn't kill these good quality sheep. He needed to cherish them so that he could collect fur from them continuously. As everyone started practicing diligently, all kinds of attribute bubbles dropped down. Very soon, the lobby turned into a bubble sea, and Wang Teng happily swam in it. I love wool. Let me collect some wool. He didn't dare to sing the song aloud, afraid that he might get beaten to death. Thus, he just sang it in his heart and quietly collected the attributes. If there were notifications now, it would be like this. Drop strength 2, speed 6. You picked it up. Your strength and speed have increased. Dropped basic fist skill *2. You picked it up. Your basic fist skill has increased in proficiency. Dropped enlightenment 1, physique 3. You picked it up. Your enlightenment and physique have increased. More people were training on Saturday as compared to the night before. Wang Teng had underestimated the number of potential attribute bubbles. Or rather, one could say that he underestimated how hard-working everyone was. The harder the students trained, the higher the probability of them dropping attributes. It was like squeezing milk. The harder one squeezed, the more milk came out. An entire day passed just like that, and Wang Teng really became an intermediate stage martial disciple. His strength, speed, and physique all had reached the standard of an intermediate stage martial disciple. He was now a bona fide intermediate stage martial disciple. Furthermore, he had reached the small achievement stage for his basic sword skill, basic fist skill, and basic footwork. Based on proficiency, the understanding of a battle technique could be split into a few stages: basic understanding, well-versed, small achievement, big achievement, mastery. At the well-versed stage, the martial disciple would be able to unleash the power of the battle technique. The small achievement stage would have an extra advantage, with the power at least doubling. If he reached the big achievement stage or even mastery, the power of the battle technique would increase many times. Besides that, Wang Teng had also received a basic blade skill and pushed it to the well-versed stage. All in all, it was a good harvest today. In the evening, at dinner time, the students were all famished after an entire day of practice. They packed up and slowly left the training lobby. Wang Teng was reviewing his gains in a corner. He held the black steel sword in his hand and moved around by combining the sword skill with footwork. He waved his long sword and cut the air with it. The youth, who was practicing his sword skill this morning, had just returned his sword and was walking out from the weapons room. While walking past Wang Teng, he glanced at him unintentionally. This. He was dumbstruck. His jaws almost dropped to the floor as he rubbed his eyes furiously. He suspected that he was having an illusion. He isn't at the well-versed stage. No, this is the small achievement. This is definitely the small achievement. His own sword skill was still at the well-versed stage. Although he hadn't reached the small achievement, he knew what it felt like. How was that possible? In the morning, when he saw Wang Teng practicing, he was just a novice. His sword skill was extremely crude. Only a day had passed, and he was already at the small achievement stage. Was this a joke? It must be a joke, right? Was there really such a genius in this world? He was starting to doubt himself. In the morning, he mocked this young man and had called him stupid. Thinking back, it felt like a sick joke. This is crazy, crazy. The youth shook his head with a bitter smile as he dejectedly walked out of the training lobby. Wang Teng didn't notice this person's existence at all. He was wholly focused on practicing his blade skill, sword skill, fist skill, and footwork. After the session, he felt invigorated. Pant. He let out a long breath. Wang Teng then placed the weapons back in the weapons room. The lobby was almost empty when he walked to the underground parking lot. Along the way, he pulled out his attributes panel. Enlightenment, 28. Physique, 52. Strength, 455. Speed, 185. Battle techniques, basic fist skill, small achievement, basic footwork, small achievement, basic sword skill, small achievement, basic blade skill, well-versed. I made great progress today. Wang Teng smiled happily as he drove home. In the house, Li Xiaomei was cooking as usual. Smelling the strong meat fragrance wafting out from the kitchen, Wang Teng's stomach started growling. Mom, what good food are you cooking today? It smells delicious, he walked into the kitchen and asked. Your dad specially asked me to buy some star beast meat for you, Li Xiaomei smiled and replied. Really? My dad is willing to spend the money. That was unexpected. Star beasts were animals that had mutated due to the influence of the Force. Since the Force was born from the universe and the stars, these beasts were named star beasts. Their meat was highly nutritious. Normal meat couldn't be compared to them. Hence, they were very expensive too. It smells amazing. Let me have a bite. He looked at the braised meat on the table and started salivating. Wang Teng couldn't control himself anymore. He picked up a piece of meat and placed it in his mouth. Oh my God, this is delicious. Mom, your cooking is fabulous. Are you a hungry ghost? Look at your smelly sweat. Hurry up and take a shower. Li Xiaomei chased him out of the kitchen. Chapter 8, Wild Rose Pub. Chapter 8, Wild Rose Pub. When Wang Shenqiu returned home at around 6 p.m., Li Xiaomei asked their helper, Aunt Chen, to call Wang Teng down for dinner. Wang Teng had just finished bathing then. After changing his clothes, he was blowing his hair with the hair dryer. Okay, Aunt Chen, I will be down in a minute, he replied. After becoming a martial disciple, his sense of hearing had gotten better. The noise of the hairdryer didn't disturb Aunt Chen's voice at all. Within a minute, he dried his hair and unplugged the hairdryer. Then, he went down for dinner. Wang Shenkuo and Li Xiaomei were waiting for him. There were a few dishes on the table, steaming hot and fragrant. The family of three sat around the dinner table and started eating. "Son, how was your practice today?" Li Xiaomei asked the question Wang Shenkuo wanted to ask. He looked at Wang Teng intently. Honestly speaking, Wang Shenkuo had a hard time being Wang Teng's father. Most of the time, his friends would boast about their children in front of him, telling him how outstanding they were or whose child became an intermediate stage martial disciple and an advanced stage martial disciple or whatnot. Wang Shenkuo was the only person who couldn't brag about his son. He was the CEO of a huge company worth a few $100 million, but his son was ignorant. If he talked about his son, other people would laugh at him. Now, his son finally got his head straight and was willing to practice martial arts. Once he became an advanced stage martial disciple, he could finally boast to his friends. "Not bad. My senior brother from the Martial Arts Academy said that I'm talented," Wang Teng replied. He didn't tell his parents that he was already an intermediate stage martial disciple. He was afraid that they would faint from the sudden piece of good news. He would release the news to them slowly in the future. "It's good that you're talented." "That's good." Wang Shenkuo was so happy that his eyes couldn't be seen properly. He waved his hand and said, "You just need to practice properly. Our Wang family might not be extremely wealthy and powerful, but we are at least better than ordinary people. You don't have to worry about martial arts resources." Wang Teng just nodded, not saying anything. He wasn't worried about resources. Other people might need all sorts of martial arts resources, but he didn't need to rely on them. He had a bug with him. Other people's resources were his resources too. "Come, eat more food. You've practiced the entire day, so you must be tired and hungry." Rather than hoping he would become a martial warrior, Li Xiaomei was more concerned if he was tired or had suffered. She felt her heart hurting a little when she saw him stuffing down his food. Wang Teng didn't have the time to talk. He had to admit that star beast meat was very delicious. It was fatty but not greasy, and it melted in his mouth like cotton candy. When he swallowed the meat, he could feel a stream of warmth spreading throughout his body. It soothed his tiredness and fatigue. Li Xiaomei and Wang Shenkuo ate some meat too, but they didn't dare to overeat. They didn't practice martial arts, so if they ate too much star beast meat, it would be harmful to their bodies instead. An average person in the martial arts era had a stronger physique because of the influence of the force, but that was a long-term and gradual effect. After dinner, just as Wang Teng prepared to go to the Jixin martial house again, his cell phone rang. He picked up his phone and heard Suji's voice on the other end. "Brother Wang Teng, we are already at the Wild Rose Pub, come over quickly." Wang Teng finally remembered this matter that had been thrown to the back of his mind. He smiled helplessly and replied, "All right, wait for me. I will come soon. It looks like I can't go to the Jixin martial house today." Wang Teng felt some regret. But, he knew that he couldn't stay in the martial arts academy every single day. "I'll take it as a chance to relax." Wang Teng bid farewell to his parents and went out of his house. Vroom, vroom, vroom. The engine of the sports car was extremely loud. Whether it was the sleek body of the car or the loud engine, it captivated all the passers-by's attention. The pub street of the South City. There were many such pub streets in Donghai, but this one was the most prosperous in the South City. There were all kinds of pubs here with different styles and price points. The public bars were suitable for low-end consumers, while the high-end bars were for society's elites or the wealthy people. It might be hard to admit it, but humans had been segregated into different classes imperceptibly. Every night, the pub street would light up brightly and colorfully. The dazzling neon lights intertwined with the glamorous reflections and colors, forming a dreamy and amazing scene. In the day, the stress from work bore down on the shoulders of these young men and ladies from the city. Hence, at night, they wanted to find a place to relax and release it all. Social pressure had never disappeared. In the martial arts era, it only got stronger. They needed to get the stress off their chest. Of course, to Wang Teng and his friends, this was just a place for them to have fun. There was a row of luxurious sports cars parked outside the Wild Rose pub. Wang Teng had to search for a long time before he managed to find a parking spot. Then, he walked into the pub. Boom! The door separated the outside noise and the interior of the pub. When one stepped in, it felt like two different worlds. The instant he opened the door, the loud music, the peals of laughter of handsome men and pretty ladies, and the blinking lights congregated and lashed out on Wang Teng's eardrums and eyes. What a familiar feeling! In his past life, ever since the Wang family had declined, Wang Teng never visited a pub. He felt that he was kicked out of this noisy world. But now, he was back again. Wang Teng strode into the Wild Rose pub. He had a handsome face and was wearing branded goods all over. Due to his martial disciple practices the past 2 days, his body had gotten firm and muscular, and his mental state had transformed entirely. Like a diamond in the sand, he stood out among the crowd. Many ladies were instantly attracted to him. His appearance had piqued their fancy. Wang Teng used to be an old man. Now, he was a true young man with a youthful face. However, his aura was completely different. He had experienced many things in his past life. There were ups and downs, and it was like riding a roller coaster. He had enjoyed wealth and experienced poverty both. He used to be an arrogant youth full of high spirits. Then, he fell to his lowest point in life and turned gloomy and blue. His rich life experience made him mature and composed. It easily left a good first impression on people and made them like him. Wang Teng scanned the pub in search of Suji and his friends. At this moment, a voice sounded on his left. "Brother Wang Teng, over here. Over here." Wang Teng looked at the lady waving at him. It was Bai Wei, the little sister in their circle of friends. Her hair was tied in a bun. She looked smart and cheeky with a hint of charm. Wang Teng could still remember how beautiful this little girl was after she grew up. In fact, she could wreck a country with her beauty. Many men were enchanted by her. "You came early." Bai Wei shifted slightly to give some space to Wang Teng. Wang Teng sat down beside her. "Brother Wang Teng, you're late," Suji complained. "The night is young, and the fun is just starting. Why should I come early?" Wang Teng smiled and replied. "Brother Wang Teng." Another young man greeted Wang Teng. "You how, long time no see." Wang Teng looked at the guy. "My father has been watching me closely recently. I had to sneak out today to come here," Yu Hao said helplessly. "This brat got dragged by his father to learn martial arts." Suji chuckled at Yu Hao's plight. "Oh? How's your practice?" Wang Teng was surprised. "I'm already a beginner stage martial disciple," Yu Hao rubbed his head and said shyly. "What the FK, you little brat? You secretly became a beginner stage martial disciple?" Suji exclaimed in shock. It was obvious that he hadn't heard this piece of news before. "You are the only martial disciple among all of us. If someone bullies us in the future, we will seek your help." He then placed his arm around Yu Hao's shoulder and sniggered. "Little Mouse, nickname for Yu Hao, we will have to rely on you in the future." Bai Wei smiled and agreed with Suji. Yu Hao started feeling a little proud when he heard their comments. Bai Wei's compliment made him feel exceptionally good. They were close friends, so it was normal to have ambiguous good feelings towards the opposite sex. This was how Yu Hao felt about Bai Wei. Wang Teng smiled and asked, "Why isn't Yuan Zhenghua here?" Everyone turned silent. He won't be coming. Suji scoffed. Huh? What happened? Wang Teng frowned and asked. That fellow is following Li Rongchen now. He's his lackey, Suji pouted and continued. Li Rongchen. Wang Teng pondered for a moment. Finally, he managed to dig this person up from the depth of his memory. Wang Teng and his friends had similar family backgrounds. Their parents' generation knew each other, and they also had business interactions. Hence, they formed their own friends' circle. As for the Li family, it was quite a huge family in Donghai. Actually, the Li family was more influential than their families. In Suji's eyes, Yuan Jinghua got close to Li Rongchen because he wanted to curry favor with him. This was how their rich second-generation circle worked. Only those with similar backgrounds could be called friends. If the difference was too big, it would become a form of currying favor. Let's not talk about him. Everyone has their own aspirations. There's nothing much to be said. Wang Teng didn't really care. You're right. Let's not talk about that fellow anymore. Just his name is enough to make me angry, said Suji. They changed the topic and ordered some alcohol and fruit platters. Then, they chatted happily with one another. As time passed, Wang Teng slowly regained the feeling of his youth. Chapter 9, When was it your turn to lecture, my friends? Chapter 9, When was it your turn to lecture, my friends? Amidst their laughter and chatting, time passed very quickly. The music in the pub was blasting and the atmosphere was lively. Slowly, everyone got more comfortable. Suji, Bai Wei, and Yu Hao were playing Truth or Dare. These three flipped their hands to decide the winner. The game had progressed for a few rounds, and everyone won and lost some. When challenged, they said interesting but harmless truths. If they didn't want to answer the truth questions, they would choose the dare option. The most exciting dare was when Yu Hao asked Bai Wei to seduce another young lady. No one expected Bai Wei to actually succeed in the end. The young beauty, who was unlucky and got chosen, turned red in her ears from Bai Wei's seduction. Everyone hugged their stomach and burst into waves of laughter. This time, it was Yu Hao's turn. Suji and Bai Wei laughed happily. Then, Suji had a bad idea. His question caused Yu Hao's face to turn as red as the pig's liver. Wang Teng also laughed and shook his head. He didn't participate since he had too many secrets. It was easy for things to get out of control if he played this kind of game. Suji and Bai Wei stood at the side and passionately cheered Yu Hao on. They urged him to answer the question. Wang Teng stood up and went to the washroom. The star beast meat he ate at night was good for the body's metabolism. It helped him to purge the toxins out of his body. After answering nature's call, Wang Teng walked back towards Suji and his friends. The moment he got nearer, he noticed that his friends were surrounded by a group of people. Furthermore, Suji and Yu Hao seemed to be quarreling with them. This bunch of people looked like gangsters, with earrings and tattoos on their bodies. They didn't look like someone to be trifled with. Wang Teng couldn't help but frown. Suddenly, one of the people pushed Suji and shouted furiously, "Damn it, this young lady dirted my clothes? Are you planning to settle this matter with only an apology? Do you know how much this shirt costs? Are you able to pay for the loss? You are just a small child. Why are you learning from the adults and playing in a pub?" As he spoke, the people beside him burst out laughing. They were mocking Suji and his friends. Yu Hao couldn't bear this humiliation. They were all rich second generation and had been from young. Wherever they went, people would flatter and indulge them. If this person had a higher status than them, it was all right to suffer a little. However, they were just nobodies who had popped out from some random street or alley. They would become the joke of the rich second-generation circle if news spread that they got their asses kicked by a bunch of ruffians. Suji's expression darkened when he was pushed by these people. He always looked relaxed and careless, as if he was the center of the world. However, he wasn't stupid. He knew that the other party won them in numbers. Besides, he also had a lady on his side. If a conflict arose, they would be the ones on the losing end. Also, this was the martial arts era. Although these people looked ordinary, there might be a master among them. They would be dead if his thoughts became true. Hence, Suji secretly took a deep breath and tried his best to say calmly, "Buddies, it's our fault that we dirtied your clothes. We are in the wrong. We can compensate you. Why do you have to be so overbearing? Do we have to make such a huge scene and let things get out of hand?" Everyone here saw what happened clearly. Even if we call the police, we will be the ones in the right. FK, are you planning to call the police? Are you threatening me? The youth whose clothes got dirted was around 20 years old. He had an aquiline nose and a sinister-looking face. This was a shameless, stubborn, and unreasonable person. When he felt that Suji was threatening him, he started shouting at him. "Suji, why are you talking nonsense with him? This fellow is creating trouble out of nothing. Bai Wei didn't touch him. He purposely let her bump into him when she got up and walked over," Yu Hao said angrily. "Brat, if you don't have evidence, don't slander others," the sinister-looking youth scoffed and said. "You know clearly whether I'm telling the truth or not." Yu Hao stood up and pointed at the youth. The sinister-looking youth turned impatient. He snorted and said, "Stop talking nonsense. Ask the young lady to have a few drinks with me and we can forget about this matter. If not, he. What did you say? Repeat that. Do you believe that I will kill you?" Yu Hao exploded in anger. These people actually wanted Bai Wei to drink with them. Anyone could tell what they were thinking of. This time, Yu Hao was really infuriated. Suji instantly thought to himself, "Oh shit." It was obvious that the other party was setting a trap for them. The moment Yu Hao's fuse blew up, there was no way this issue could be resolved. "Yu Hao, stop talking." Bai Wei had been pulling Yu Hao all this while, but when she wasn't paying attention, he had broken free. At this moment, she also felt the atmosphere tensing up. "Little brat, how dare you try to kill me? I will kill you today." The sinister-looking youth gave an eerie smile and took a step forward. He bent his fingers into a claw, aiming it at Yu Hao's neck. It was a vicious move. The moment he acted, he went for the kill. "Martial disciple!" someone exclaimed in surprise. Yu Hao's expression changed instantly. He didn't expect the other party to attack him so decisively and be a martial disciple at that. In his haste, he didn't have the courage to directly resist the man. He could only shift to the side to evade. Fortunately, Yu Hao was dragged by his father to learn martial arts, so he was a beginner stage martial disciple now. If he was just an average person, he might not have been able to dodge the attack. Rather, he would probably freeze on the spot because of the fright he received from his opponent's vicious and ruthless aura. The pub was in a mess. Suji quickly pulled Bai Wei to the side. They had never practiced martial arts before, so they couldn't help at all. The sinister-looking youth was slightly surprised when he saw Yu Hao successfully evading his attack. But he didn't mind. He twisted his body and swept his legs towards Yu Hao. Yu Hao hurriedly grabbed the chair beside him to block the kick. Bang! The metal chair was dented by the kick from the sinister-looking youth. Due to the huge force, Yu Hao flew out diagonally and slammed heavily on the ground. Along with him, tables and chairs also crashed on the ground. Alcohol bottles shattered loudly as they landed on the floor, spilling wine everywhere. The entire pub had been turned upside down within a second. The men and women, who were cheerful earlier, screamed and hid far away. Nonetheless, most people didn't leave. Instead, they hid some distance away to watch the show. Cough, cough. Yu Hao clutched his chest and coughed a few times. He felt as if his ribs were broken. He knew that he offended someone powerful this time. Yu Hao had just become a martial disciple. Based on his opponent's strength, although the guy was within the range of a beginner stage martial disciple, he was only one step away from breaking through to the intermediate stage. The sinister-looking youth retracted his leg and walked towards Yu Hao step by step. "Little brat, weren't you acting arrogantly just now? You want to kill me, but your ability isn't enough." The sinister-looking youth slowly walked towards Yu Hao and forced him into a corner. He coldly looked down at him while mocking him at the same time. "If you dare to touch me, my dad won't forgive you," Yu Hao gritted his teeth and said with a pale face. "Young friend, are you still a baby? Why are you looking for your father when you can't beat me?" The sinister-looking youth sneered. "You." Yu Hao's entire face turned red in embarrassment. Suji couldn't let his friend get humiliated anymore. He stood up and said, "We admit our defeat today. Tell us a number. We will compensate you." The sinister-looking youth shook his forefinger and clicked his tongue. His expression was full of contempt. "Stupid child, I will teach you how to be obedient today. If you don't have the ability, don't stand up." The sinister-looking youth raised his right leg and swept it at Yu Hao's head viciously. Some people couldn't bear to see the next scene, closing their eyes. Suji and Bai Wei's expression also changed abruptly. If this kick landed on Yu Hao, he would definitely get severely injured. Also, it was aimed at his head. He might be gone if he was unlucky. They didn't expect this sinister-looking youth to be so ruthless. A heavy collision was heard. However, Yu Hao remained at the same spot, unscathed. On the other hand, the sinister-looking youth flew out and slammed violently on the ground. He vomited a mouthful of blood. Everyone, including Suji, Bai Wei, and the other people in the pub, were dumbfounded by this sudden change. The spectators stared absent-mindedly at Wang Teng, who was standing in front of Yu Hao. Wang Teng placed his hand in his pocket and spat out the cigarette in his mouth. Like a cool mafia boss, he said indifferently, "When was it your turn to lecture my friends?" The moment he finished speaking, though, his heart skipped a beat. When that sinister-looking youth hit the ground, a few attribute bubbles had also dropped. "You can drop attributes like this?" Wang Teng controlled the curiosity in his heart. There were many people around them, so he didn't walk forward. You. Yu Hao finally regained his senses. His face filling with astonishment, he stammered and didn't know what to say. Suji and Bai Wei looked at Wang Teng in shock too. They felt as though it was their first time seeing him. "Why aren't you getting up? Is the floor very cooling?" Wang Teng laughed and said, "Brother, you are my biological brother from now on." "You kept it from us really well," Suji shouted excitedly. Bai Wei ran over in small steps, staring at Wang Teng with glistening eyes all the while. "Enough. Why are you shouting like this? When did I hide it from you?" "You just didn't ask me," Wang Teng replied helplessly. "Bastard, how dare you hit me? Charge! Kill this little brat!" The sinister-looking youth climbed up from the ground and wiped the blood off the edge of his lips. There was enmity and hatred in his eyes when he shouted to the people beside him. Brother, this brat is too powerful. We are not his match." One of his friends looked at Wang Teng in fear. The sinister-looking beginner stage martial disciple youth had flown out like a ragdoll before they could even see how Wang Teng threw him. As normal young men who weren't martial disciples, what help could they offer? Useless. The sinister-looking youth kicked the person and shouted at Wang Teng, "Young brat, tell me your name if you dare. Wait for me to call my men." Wang Teng suddenly walked forward. On the other side, the sinister-looking youth flinched and took a few steps back. Wang Teng touched the bubbles casually and collected them. Strength *15. Speed *12. So many attributes. Wang Teng was amazed. This was the first time so many attributes had dropped from the same person. Killing monsters will give you more experience. Is this the correct way of using my bug? He thought for a moment and threw this matter aside for the time being. This wasn't the right time to ponder on this question. Wang Teng lifted the corners of his lips and replied, "What are you afraid of? My name is Li Rongcheng. I will give you half an hour to call your men. If you're late, I won't wait for you." "Okay, wait for me here." The sinister-looking youth left the Wild Rose pub in a haggard state. After they left, Bai Wei couldn't help but chuckle. "Brother Wang Teng, you're so bad," pushing the blame to Li Rongcheng. "If he knew what you did, he would probably hate you to death." A cold light flashed past Wang Teng's eyes. No one saw it, though. He had a deep hatred towards Li Rongcheng. In his past life, they had no grudges between them. Still, after the Wang family declined, the other party showed no thoughts of letting them off. "Let's go home." Wang Teng had no interest in this affair anymore. He turned and walked out of the pub. "We are not waiting for them to come back." Yu Hao was unwilling to leave like this. Wang Teng slapped his head and said, "Did you grow stupid after learning martial arts? We don't know how many people he will bring. What if he brings an advanced stage martial disciple to help him or a martial warrior? Are we still going to stay here and wait for death?" "That's right, you are too impulsive. If it wasn't for brother Wang Teng, you'd have suffered a huge beating today." Suji couldn't help but reprimand Yu Hao. "Let's go. They can look for Li Rongcheng if they want. I'm not him." After Wang Teng and his friends left the pub, he drove his car and disappeared into the night. If that bunch of people wanted to find him, they would need some luck. Even if they did find him, no one knew if it would be their luck or their misfortune. Chapter 10, The Gaze of Love from a Father. Chapter 10, The Gaze of Love from a Father. The moment Wang Teng and his friends left the pub, the staff looked at the mess on the ground and turned to ask a 30-year-old man wearing a fitting suit. "Manager, are we going to let them go just like that?" The suited man glared at the staff member who had asked the question and replied furiously, "What else can I do? Do you want to ask them to stay? You're not observant at all. That Zhao Gangbao is a beginner stage martial disciple, and his brother is an advanced stage martial disciple. As for the rich second generations, all of them come from wealthy families with assets of over 100 million. Most importantly, there are 2 martial disciples among them. Let's not talk about the one that got beaten. The one that acted just now should be an intermediate stage martial disciple. He became an intermediate stage martial disciple at such a young age. Do you know what that means? He would at least become an advanced stage martial disciple." "Idiot. If you want to die, don't pull me along." The staff member was speechless. A second later, he started admiring the young man from the bottom of his heart. His manager had already investigated the backgrounds of these people. No wonder he could become the manager while he was only an unimportant low-level worker. The moment they met a problem, the difference between them was evident as night and day. "What do we do now?" The staff immediately asked for advice modestly. "Let's wait for some time. Didn't that Zhao Gangbao say that he will call for reinforcements? He is revengeful in nature, so he will definitely come back. He might break some things again, so we can calculate the losses after they leave. That bastard! Why does he have to provoke the rich second generations? Do you believe that he won't be able to get away with his revenge this time? Even if his elder brother comes, it might be useless." The man in the suit started cursing the troublemaker. He thought for a moment and continued, "We will put all the losses on him. Also, we must preserve the surveillance images in the pub. They are our evidence, so we can't lose them. I'll make a copy later and send them to our boss through WeChat. Since this matter is linked to a few martial disciples, normal people like us can't deal with it. We can only let the boss make the decision." After Wang Teng and the other people left, they didn't have the mood to go anywhere else. Hence, they went back home. It was past 10 p.m. when they reached their homes. Wang Teng didn't go to the Jixin martial house after that. Instead, he surfed the internet at home and flipped through pieces of information to strengthen his understanding of the martial arts era. What happened tonight was a warning to him. He had just met a random gangster, but this gangster's ability was already close to the intermediate stage. Had he not collected attributes furiously for the past 2 days and leveled up, he wouldn't have been able to settle today's affair. It would have led to a huge disaster. The percentage of people practicing martial arts wasn't high within the population of a few billion. But, the problem was, when they were thrown into the sea of humans, you wouldn't know when you would be unlucky and meet one of them. What if he offended a real martial warrior in the future? The other party could injure him and the Wang family with just a flick of their fingers. He never wanted to experience the lesson from his past life again. When Wang Teng just got reborn, he had felt a sense of danger in his heart. Now, the premonition was getting stronger. He must become a real martial warrior as quickly as possible. Martial disciple, even an advanced stage martial disciple, wasn't enough. He would only have some ability to protect himself if he became a martial warrior. A little later than 11 p.m., Wang Teng finished bathing and prepared to hit the bed. He picked up his phone to set an alarm. He needed to wake up early tomorrow. When he turned on his phone, he noticed that he had received 2 messages on WeChat. Although it was still 2009 in this world, WeChat already existed here and was popularized. Everyone would post some moments on their WeChat when they had nothing to do. There were many followers of the martial warriors' friend circle, and it was extremely popular. This was because the martial warriors could enter the Xinguo continent through the dimensional rifts. Thus, they took photos of many amazing sceneries and wonders in the Xinguo continent, as well as the exotic beauties there. Nowadays, showcasing clothes, bags, and luxurious cars was all too low. The high-class and classy trend now was posting photos of the other world. Wang Teng looked at his 2 messages. One was sent more than an hour ago. Brother Wang Teng, I'm home. From Bai Wei. There was a cute emoticon at the end of the sentence. The other message was sent 3 minutes ago. Brother Wang Teng, I'm sleeping soon. Good night. From Bai Wei. She had added a sleeping emoticon at the end. Why is this little girl so polite? I understand her message after she reached home, but why does she have to message me before she sleeps? Wang Teng had a weird expression on his face. He pondered for a moment. This message was sent 3 minutes ago. She should be asleep now, right? Oh, it was sent 4 minutes ago. He decided that he shouldn't reply to her to prevent disturbing her. Wang Teng scrolled through a few of his friends' posts. Nothing piqued his fancy, so he put down his phone and closed his eyes to get some rest. Within a minute, his breathing stabilized, and he entered deep sleep. On the other end of the phone, in a pink princess room, Bai Wei waited for a long time but didn't receive any reply. Disappointment appeared uncontrollably on her face. Slap. She threw her phone and almost went crazy. After rolling around a few times on her bed, she felt frustrated. The next day, Sunday. Wang Teng woke up early in the morning. After having his breakfast, he left the house under the contented gaze of his father, Wang Shenkuo. Finally, I don't feel that gaze anymore. After the sports car drove a long distance, Wang Teng shivered. Could this be the legendary gaze of love? SSSS, that was so scary. After some time, Wang Teng arrived at the Jixin martial house. A few attribute bubbles were scattered on the grass field and the pathways in the martial arts academy. He picked them up along the way and walked into the martial disciple training building. Some students were practicing in the training lobby on the first floor. Wang Teng took a look around briefly. Most of them were those who came the earliest yesterday. Wang Teng had a deep impression of them. He thought that he was early enough, but these people were even earlier than him. They were indeed hard-working. However, on this path of diligence, I, Wang Teng, will not admit defeat. Wang Teng walked over and greeted them politely. He also collected the attributes these people had dropped. Basic sword skill *1. Basic footwork *1. Strength *3. Basic fist skill *2. Speed *5. This is a good start. I'm so happy. After collecting the attributes, Wang Teng didn't stop moving. He walked straight up the stairs to the second floor. His actions attracted the attention of a few students. The young man practicing his sword skill kindly reminded him, based on the rules of the martial arts academy, a beginner stage martial disciple isn't allowed to go up to the second floor. I know. Thank you for your reminder. Wang Teng turned around and smiled. But, yesterday night, I accidentally broke through and became an intermediate stage martial disciple. When he finished speaking, he had already climbed the second flight of stairs. His figure couldn't be seen anymore. He boasted so calmly and even flicked his sleeves, not leaving anything behind. The young man practicing his sword skill froze on the spot. What did he say? He asked the other students in disbelief. This brat just came yesterday, right? The students didn't answer him directly. Instead, they retorted with another question. That's not right. He came on Friday night. I saw him, another student suddenly said. He became an intermediate stage martial disciple after practicing for 2 days? Are you kidding? That's definitely impossible. He must have practiced martial arts before he came to the martial arts academy. Look at him. He's obviously a rich second generation. The poor study while the wealthy learn martial arts. His family is influential, so he definitely learned martial arts earlier than us. It's easier for him too. Everyone agreed with this explanation. No one believed that someone in this world could turn from a weak, useless human being into a beginner stage martial disciple and then an intermediate stage martial disciple within 2 days. This was impossible. Genius wasn't enough to describe such a person. You could only call him a monster. Of course, that was excluding those people who cheated and had bugs. Chapter 11, Walk the Fatty. Chapter 11, Walk the Fatty. There were many students on the second floor of the training building. Wang Teng scanned his surroundings, and his eyes suddenly lit up when he saw a familiar figure. It was that agile fatty. At this moment, just like the last time, he was sprinting on the running track. So, the fatty had also become an intermediate stage martial disciple. No wonder Wang Teng didn't see him yesterday on the first floor. He had come to the second floor. Fatty, good morning. Wang Teng greeted the other party as though he was an old friend. The fatty turned around when he heard the voice. His expression then instantly changed. Why is it this fellow? He pretended to ignore Wang Teng and didn't reply to him. Instead, he started running faster. Wang Teng watched him run like a madman. This fellow didn't know that he was dropping attributes behind him. But it made Wang Teng elated. He executed his basic footwork and followed behind the fatty, picking up the attributes along the way. Speed *6. Speed *7. After becoming an intermediate stage martial disciple, the fatty's dropping even more attributes. So, the more powerful you are, the more attribute bubbles you drop. Wang Teng thought to himself. In that case, he would definitely be able to pick up more attributes on the second floor. After all, everyone here was an intermediate stage martial disciple. He believed that it wouldn't take long for him to break through and become an advanced stage martial disciple. He would be one step closer to becoming an official martial warrior then. Why are you following me so closely like a medicinal plaster? Is there an end to this? The indignant voice of the fatty in front pulled Wang Teng out of his deep thoughts. Haha, where's the fun in training alone? Why don't we have a competition? Let's see who can run 10 rounds in the shortest time. What do you think? Do you want to compete? Asked Wang Teng. The fatty wanted to reject him. But, he had a sudden thought, so he replied, if you lose, you will stay away from me and let me train alone. Okay. Wang Teng agreed and continued, what if you lose? What a joke. How can I lose? The fatty scoffed. Confidence is a good thing. However, since you raised a bet, I have mine too. Competition must be fair, right? Wang Teng said. What do you want? The fatty frowned and asked. Very simple. If you lose, you will sing this song Zhenfu, which means conquer in Chinese. What do you think? Wang Teng asked. All right. As long as you win, I can sing anything for you. Don't talk about one Zhenfu. I can sing 10 songs for you. The fatty patted his chest and agreed. Wang Teng sniggered in his heart. 10 songs. You would definitely be crying later. There's a timer at the side. Let me find someone to help us check the time. The fatty walked to one side after he finished speaking and spoke a few sentences to a student who was training. He asked the student for help. The student nodded and followed the fatty to the side of the running track. Both of you can prepare first. When I shout start, you will start running, the student standing beside the timer said. The two participants nodded. The fatty started preparing for the sprint. He shook his legs to relax his muscles, but in the end, only his fat shuddered violently. The other students also gathered around the running track when they saw two students having a competition. However, they couldn't help but laugh upon seeing the fatty's fats shaking. This fatty went to learn footwork and speed even though he is so fat. I wonder what he's thinking. But, honestly speaking, he does have some ability. He's faster than a rabbit when he runs. Upon hearing the discussions from the side, the fatty felt pleased with himself. He gave Wang Teng a provocative look and stood up straight without moving. He didn't even get into the starting position. Wang Teng smiled. He copied his actions, standing still on the spot. At the same time, he asked casually, Fatty, what's your name? My name is Wu Liang. The fatty pointed to his nose and said, you must remember it in case you don't even know who you lost to. After he finished, he continued asking, what about you? Wang Teng. Remember to sing Zhenfu after you lose. Wang Teng smiled and said. Tisk. Wu Liang rolled his eyes in contempt. Right then, a shout was suddenly heard from the side. Ready start. Wang Teng and the fatty were talking to each other, but the moment the voice fell, they dashed out simultaneously. The expressions of the people at the side changed slightly. Both of them had moved like lightning. In an instant, they were more than 10 meters away. They maintained their high speed as they continued running. They didn't bother to save their stamina for the last burst of fire just because they were running 10 rounds. This was a timed competition, and they were competing based on time. Also, people who practiced martial arts had great stamina. Running 10 rounds wasn't a big deal to them. Wu Liang might be fat, but he wasn't slow at all. Instead, his speed exceeded the spectators. There weren't many who could practice their footwork and speed to his stage. This was the reason why everyone's expression changed instantly. As expected of a fatty who ran like the wind. This was the exclamation in many people's minds. But, when they looked at Wang Teng, they looked extra shocked. They understood the fatty's abilities, so they accepted his speed as a matter of fact, even though they were surprised. However, Wang Teng was an unfamiliar face. It was highly likely he had just become an intermediate stage martial disciple. Yet, this newly advanced intermediate stage martial disciple's speed was on par with Wu Liang. This was amazing. Wait, they remembered that Wu Liang had also just become an intermediate stage martial disciple. He only came to the second floor yesterday. In that case, these two people were both fresh newbies. Were the newbies all the fierce nowadays? How were old people like them supposed to live? It was indeed true, the younger generations would excel the older generation, leaving no paths for the older generation. A wave of sorrow surged through the hearts of a few intermediate stage martial disciples. This newbie is slightly weaker than Wu Liang, someone commented. That's hard to say. Although he's lagging, the distance between him and the fatty is the same. Didn't you notice that he's never more than 20 meters behind the fatty? Hey, if you hadn't said it, I wouldn't have noticed. They looked at Wang Teng in astonishment. When they observed him carefully, they could tell that he didn't seem tired at all. Indeed, Wang Teng wasn't giving it his all. He was trailing Wu Liang because he wanted to pick up the attribute bubbles. Also, the whole purpose of this competition was to let Wu Liang drop more attributes. He had gotten some basic understanding of his bug. If he wanted to let these small monsters drop more attributes, he needed to make them train harder. Or he could hit them. The harder he hit them, the more attributes they might drop. He had received the inspiration for the last point from the sinister-looking youth. But, this hypothesis still needed affirmation. After all, he couldn't find a random person and beat him up, right? To get rid of Wang Teng, Wu Liang was exceptionally serious about this competition. He used more effort, so naturally, more attributes dropped. He was dropping them like laying eggs the entire way. Basic footwork *4. Wang Teng felt that he was playing Temple Run, and the attribute bubbles were like the gold coins. He could almost hear the ringing sounds when he collected a bubble. As Wang Teng ran and collected the attributes, his own attributes kept rising. He didn't feel tired the entire way. Instead, he felt more and more energetic. This was why he dared to compete with the fatty. He was cheating, and it would be embarrassing if he still lost. When the onlookers saw Wang Teng revealing a smile on the corners of his lips, their expressions turned strange. This fellow was walking a dog no wait, he was walking the fatty. All he lacked was a chain. Wu Liang didn't notice anything weird, though. When he saw that Wang Teng was always lagging behind him, he looked back and laughed. This is so simple. I told you that you're not my match. Why are you making yourself suffer? Swoosh. The moment he finished speaking, a figure dashed past beside him. The smile on the fatty's face froze. His mouth dropped, and he opened his eyes wide. He couldn't say anything for a long while. FK. Chapter 12, Crazy About Duels. Chapter 12, Crazy About Duels. Wu Liang was frustrated. You're so treacherous. You were preserving your strength all these while and only released it at the last stage. You made me happy for no reason. Wang Teng sniggered and said, who was the one who was so confident at the start? Also, I wanted to save some of your ego, so I let you be in the lead for a while before catching up at the end. Why should I believe you? You bad old man, you're so evil. Wu Liang snorted. Why did I become a bad old man? Fine. Do you dare to admit your loss? If you do, I won't ask you to fulfill your bet with me. Wang Teng was speechless. Who says that I can't admit my defeat? All I have to do is sing the song Zhenfu, right? What's there to be afraid of? Wu Liang straightened his neck. Go ahead and sing, then. The flowers are drooping from waiting. Wang Teng glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. Wu Liang instantly looked as though he had eaten a fly. The expression on his fat face kept changing. He couldn't put down his ego and sing the song, but on the other hand, he didn't want other people to think that he couldn't accept losing either. His entire expression could be described in one word: dilemma. In the end, he admitted defeat while looking like a deflated balloon. He started singing with the voice of a mosquito. I can't hear you. Wang Teng placed his hand beside his ear and pretended that he couldn't hear properly. Wu Liang was furious. After taking a long, deep breath, he increased his volume. This is how I got conquered by you. Ha ha ha. The people around them burst out laughing. This fatty was tone deaf. But, they felt sorry for him too. He had to sing Zhenfu in front of so many people. This must be black history in his life. Wang Teng was really evil. He actually pranked someone like this. Wang Teng couldn't help but laugh too. He waved his hand and said, "Fine, fine, stop singing. Your voice will frighten little children." Wu Liang replied, "Don't. I still need to sing 10 songs." This time, it was Wang Teng's turn to feel speechless. This fatty was a little cunning. "This is how I got conquered by you." Wu Liang got even more motivated when he saw Wu Liang's frustrated look. "Get off." Wang Teng ran away like his life depended on it. Damn it, his voice was too terrifying. The fatty was fun to play with, but he was too cunning. Too much was always not good. Since he was a good pastime, he would play with him slowly in the future. The fatty looked around the same age as him, yet he was already an intermediate stage martial disciple. This meant that he had the talent. He might become a martial warrior in the future. He was a fat sheep full of potential. Wang Teng could milk this fatty as his long-term dueling buddy. The students gathering around ran away in fright. They hid far away and discussed with one another for some time. While they marveled at the young men's abilities, their competitiveness was ignited too. All of them started practicing even harder. As a result, there were already many attribute bubbles littering the second floor, as if it was raining here. Wang Teng walked over and picked all of them up like a good Samaritan. He also greeted the other students. Strength *7. Basic fist skill *3. Basic blade skill *6. After another round of upgrading his attributes, he stopped in front of a student practicing his fist skill, observing the young man for a long time. When the student finished his session, he stopped to take a rest. Wang Teng took the chance and walked forward. "Senior brother, shall we have a duel?" The young man looked a little older than Wang Teng and seemed to be slightly above 20. He was stunned for a moment when he heard Wang Teng's challenge. He replied, "You're Wang Teng, right? I am Zhang Xiaoyang. I saw you competing with Wu Liang just now and am a little interested in you. Since you brought it up yourself, let's have a duel. Senior brother Zhang, please." The two of them stood in an empty area and distanced themselves. Wang Teng raised his hand to ask Zhang Xiaoyang to start. "I will not be polite then." Zhang Xiaoyang clenched his fist and stomped his leg, darting towards Wang Teng first. Bang, bang, bang. The duo got right down to it. Wang Teng didn't use other battle techniques, only employing his footwork and fist skills to fight with Zhang Xiaoyang. As their fists went back and forth, the fight looked violent and fierce. If they were hit, their punches would directly land on their muscles. Zhang Xiaoyang was slightly surprised. He was a muscular man. One look and you could tell that he was a bulky guy. However, Wang Teng was wearing loose sportswear, so the muscles on his body weren't prominent. From his appearance, he just looked like an ordinary youth. But when he started fighting for real, he was full of explosive power. It didn't feel compatible at all. Also, Wang Teng's ability astounded him too. A moment ago, he thought that Wang Teng was already quick with his footwork. Now, he felt that he needed to retract his judgment. Wang Teng's fist skill wasn't weaker than him. This fellow seems to be a genius. Zhang Xiaoyang thought to himself. They were like a Roland for an Oliver, evenly matched. They fought back and forth, and for a moment, no one won or lost. Zhang Xiaoyang's basic fist skill has reached the big achievement stage. Yet, Wang Teng isn't at a disadvantage after fighting for so long. The students standing far away didn't have high hopes for Wang Teng initially. Hence, they didn't take much notice when he challenged Zhang Xiaoyang. They thought that it would end within a few rounds. But, the reality was unexpected. The two of them fought for a long while, without any results. Could it be that Zhang Xiaoyang didn't try his best? Someone was puzzled. Are you stupid? Look at Zhang Xiaoyang. Does he look like he's not trying his best? Another felt speechless. I'm not fighting anymore. I'm not fighting anymore. Zhang Xiaoyang quickly waved his hands after the two of them collided and retreated a few steps. Why don't you want to fight anymore? Wang Teng was unwilling to stop. Your fist skill is on par with me. There won't be any outcomes if we continue fighting. Instead, we might lose too much energy, affecting our training for the entire day, said Zhang Xiaoyang. Also, if you didn't compete with Wu Liang, I would have lost already. Alright, let's not go further than necessary. We will have more chances to duel in the future, replied Wang Teng. Okay. I learned many things after fighting with you. Zhang Xiaoyang nodded. Wang Teng went to the side to rest and restore his stamina. At the same time, he counted the gains from his duel. Basic fist skill *23. Strength *45. As expected, his guess was correct. Fighting with monsters would make them drop attributes. The harder they fought, the more attributes they dropped, especially attributes like basic fist skill. They would never drop so much when they were practicing. So this is the correct way to use my bug. While strolling around the training room, Wang Teng slowly regained his stamina. At the same time, he also picked up the attributes from the other students. Half an hour later, most of his stamina was restored. He went to the weapons room to pick a sword. Then, he came in front of a student practicing sword skills and said, "Senior brother, are you free to test my sword skills?" Okay. The other party was decisive and nodded in agreement. More and more students arrived at the training arena. However, only those who came earlier knew that 2 duels had happened before this. That Wang Teng is having a duel with another person again. This time, he's using his sword skill. A student that just came felt puzzled. What's the matter? This student looks unfamiliar. Is he new? Another student started explaining to him. On the other side, Wang Teng and the other young man had already started fighting. Their long swords collided, letting out sparks and metallic clangs. A sword duel was naturally more dangerous, but both parties knew their limits well. They wouldn't intentionally hurt the other party. When the duel ended, Wang Teng gained many attributes as expected. He rested at the side. Basic sword skill *26. Strength *30. An hour later, Wang Teng found a student practicing blade skill and cupped his fists at the young man. Senior brother, my blade is extremely thirsty now. Let's have a duel. Alright, my blade couldn't keep itself down anymore too. The two of them looked exceptionally serious. There were sparks in their eyes as they looked at each other. The other students were already numb. Wu Liang was one of them. He suddenly felt pity for the student Wang Teng found when he looked at him. This Wang Teng was crazy about duels. He knew all the battle techniques, and the result was always a draw. He must be a monster. Chapter 13, Advanced Stage Martial Disciple. Chapter 13, Advanced Stage Martial Disciple. For the entire morning, besides picking up the attributes other people dropped, Wang Teng also looked for them for duels. Footwork, fist skill, sword skill, and blade skill. As long as he knew something, he would find others to challenge them. His nickname, Duel Fanatic, started spreading among the students unknowingly. No one knew who started this nickname, though. You better make sure that I don't know who that bastard is. When Wang Teng heard someone calling him by this nickname, his entire face turned black. What the FK? What grudges do we have? Why do you have to frame me like this? Achoo! The fatty, Wu Liang, was eating his lunch in the cafeteria. Suddenly, he sneezed uncontrollably. He choked, and the rice in his mouth flew up to his nose. Next, The rice bits flowed down his nose with his mucus, painting a disgusting scenery. He rubbed his nose and said with frustration, "Why did I sneeze for no reason? Is someone scolding me behind my back? How mean." Wang Teng looked at his attributes panel. The gains on the second floor were huge. In one morning, most of his attributes were close to an advanced stage martial disciple. Enlightenment, 35. Physique, 66. Strength, 621. Speed, 323. Battle techniques, basic fist skill, big achievement, basic footwork, big achievement, basic sword skill, big achievement, basic blade skill, small achievement. The requirements for an advanced stage martial disciple were physique 70, strength 700 kilograms, and speed 100 meters in 5 seconds. He just needed to work harder in the afternoon, and a fresh new advanced stage martial disciple would come out of the oven. His basic battle techniques were also upgraded by a level. His fist skill, sword skill, and footwork had advanced from the small achievement stage to the big achievement stage. His blade skill changed from the well-versed to the small achievement stage. In short, his ability had undergone a tremendous change. Unfortunately, he didn't pick up any new battle techniques today. It seemed that most people chose these few battle techniques to practice and master. Wang Teng walked out of the training building and headed to the cafeteria of the Martial Arts Academy. He had learned from Zhang Xiaoyang and a few other students that the Jixin Martial House also had a cafeteria. As long as one had the money, one could eat anything. Even if you wanted to eat Star Beast dishes, they had it. These Star Beasts were all killed by the martial warriors from the Martial Arts Academy and sold to the Academy in exchange for points or money. Hence, the Martial Arts Academy had an abundant array of Star Beasts ingredients as compared to other places. It included rare Star Beasts that weren't sold outside at all. The Martial Arts Academy had specially hired Force Chef Masters to attend to these ingredients. Force Chef was a secondary career derived from the martial warriors. Every single Force Chef must have the Force in their bodies. If anyone wanted to cultivate with the Force, they needed to be a martial warrior. A martial warrior as a chef? Would anyone dare to think about that? However, the dishes cooked by a Force Chef Master weren't ordinary. They would benefit martial warriors when they cultivated. The methods of preparations and the dishes all came from the Xinghua continent. Even this career title originated from there. The salary of Force Chef Masters was high, and there were no dangers. Many martial warriors pursued and flattered Force Chefs because they wanted to eat Force dishes. Hence, the status of Force Chef Masters was actually rather high. On the way to the cafeteria, Wang Teng asked Zhang Xiaoyang curiously, "So, you're saying that the cafeteria of the Jixin Martial House provides Force dishes?" Zhang Xiaoyang explained, "Yes. Our Jixin Martial House is one of the top 3 martial arts academies in China. Naturally, we have the ability to hire Force Chef Masters. Today, after many experiments and trial and error by the Force Chefs on the earth, new dishes were created based on the ones from the other world. An entire system of Force dishes cuisine was formed. But, these Force dishes from the other world are only available on the 3rd floor of the cafeteria. Normally, only martial warriors will go there. Average students can't afford them." Wang Teng nodded. He was shocked as he asked, "Oh? We can still see martial warriors." "We can see them, but not many. Most of the martial warriors are exploring the Xinghua continent during normal times or executing some missions released by the martial arts academies. They won't spend much time in the martial arts academy," Zhang Xiaoyang elaborated. Wang Teng nodded as he continued to expand his knowledge. "Are Force dishes expensive?" "They are not just expensive. Usually, Force dishes cost tens of thousands. They are difficult to prepare, and the ingredients are rare. Some of them even cost a few million or tens of millions. They are extremely expensive," Zhang Xiaoyang exclaimed. "Oh my God, Even Michelin chefs aren't so outrageous. Wang Teng was flabbergasted. Did one meal cost a few million or tens of millions? Were martial warriors all so wealthy? Of course, he didn't go to the third floor of the cafeteria. He went to eat on the first floor with Zhang Xiaoyang and a few other students. A few million for a meal, Wang Teng wasn't so extravagant. Even if he wanted to eat, he would wait until he became a martial warrior and was able to earn 100 million easily. At that time, he could let his parents have a taste of the force dishes too. After eating, he rested for an hour. Then, he continued training in the afternoon. Wang Teng grabbed his thirsty blade and started dueling with the student. He mainly looked for those practicing basic blade skills. Among all his battle techniques, only his blade skill was at the small achievement stage. A human had to be fair. He mustn't favor any skill more than the others. Hence, he decided to raise his basic blade skill to the big achievement stage first. Time flew in the afternoon. In a blink of an eye, a few hours had passed. All of Wang Teng's attributes had broken through the threshold of an advanced stage martial disciple. That meant that he had finally become an advanced stage martial disciple. Among the martial disciples, he was part of the elites now. He was a slightly stronger nobody. His basic blade skill had also reached the big achievement stage. However, his footwork, fist skill, and sword skill accidentally reached the perfected stage. They flung the basic blade skill behind them again. What happened to fairness? Basic blade skill, wronged emoticon. Everything seems to be rising a little too quickly. Wang Teng felt helpless in his heart. His life was so lonely. Wang Teng decided to continue staying on the second floor for a few more days. He would still be able to raise his attributes. There might be more attributes for him to collect on the third floor, but a few days wouldn't make any difference. At night, Wang Teng returned home and had dinner with his parents. Then, he went back to the Jixin martial house to pick up attributes. He worked until 11 p.m. before he finally returned home. After bathing, he laid on the bed and silently opened his attributes panel to take a look. Enlightenment, 43. Physique, 84. Strength, 964. Speed, 533. Battle techniques, basic fist skill, perfected, basic footwork, perfected, basic sword skill, perfected, basic blade skill, big achievement. Not bad. Looking at his attributes, he was above average among the advanced stage martial disciples. As long as Wang Teng didn't meet an official martial warrior, he would be able to protect himself. He was immersed in his thoughts as he laid on his bed. After some time, he slowly slipped into the dreamland. The next day, Wang Teng woke up early as usual. It was Monday, so he needed to go to school. He almost forgot that he was still a senior high student. Although he just got reborn, he still had the mindset of an adult. Coincidentally, it was the weekend, so he went to practice his martial arts. He didn't do things that a senior high student should do. In the morning, everyone sat down together to have breakfast. Wang Shenkuo ate some porridge and said, "Although you're practicing martial arts now, you can't forget about your schoolwork. There's a martial arts course at university. If you're able to become an advanced stage martial disciple before the university entrance exam, you can apply for it. It would be a good choice if he could enter a military academy. After he graduated, he would at least be a major or above. In this day, the military ranks are closely related to one's martial arts. However, until now, only martial warriors who graduated from recognized military academies are given military titles. Martial warrior graduates from normal universities won't have this special privilege." Wang Teng nodded and started contemplating. The country was the best protection. If he could enter a military academy and receive a military rank after he graduated, it was a good solution too. Of course, even if he entered a normal university, there would be many benefits for martial warriors. Regular academies also had formed their own factions. The amount of protection every martial warrior faction gave to their own martial warriors was undeniable. Also, the martial warriors were given more freedom. All in all, each had its own benefit. It seemed that if there was a possibility, he should get into a good university. He had a bug, but he needed time to grow too. Before he became someone powerful enough to disregard all rules, the best solution was to find strong support. The problem was, whether it was his past life or the current one, he had never studied properly in school. His school results were atrocious. Chapter 14, In the past, you placed the prettiest lady in school beside me side. Chapter 14, In the past, you placed the prettiest lady in school beside me side. Wang Shenqiu chatted with Wang Teng as he ate his breakfast. In the past, he wouldn't have listened to his father at all. Now, he listened really carefully and started pondering over his father's words. He has grown up. Wang Shenqiu felt content. Wang Teng's performance was vastly different these 2 days. He used to hear other people telling him that their child suddenly grew up and became mature. He could only smile bitterly in response. He felt that his useless son wouldn't be able to mature before he turned 30. As his father, he was really worried for him. Yet, now, Wang Shenqiu managed to wait until the day arrived. Sob, this is too touching. His sternness was finally starting to take effect. He didn't waste his effort being a strict father. Wang Shenqiu finished his porridge and wiped his mouth. He said with a serious expression, the university entrance exam is a turning point in life. I hope that you can think about it properly. I'm informing you about this not because I want you to take the exam this year. The university entrance exam is just around the corner. Your studies are bad and you only started practicing martial arts recently, so there's no hope of you taking the exam this year. We can only wait until next year or the year after. The Ministry of Education has a rule. You can register for the martial arts course anytime before you turn 20. Hence, you have 2 chances to repeat your high school. As long as you can become an advanced stage martial disciple before you are 20, you will have the chance to register for the martial arts course. I can hire tutors to help you with your studies and give you specialized tutoring. There will be a good chance for you to enter university. He looked at Wang Teng after he finished speaking with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. He hoped that his song would have a bright future. This was probably the wish all parents had for their children. This might be a form of love. Wang Teng slowly finished the fried dough stick in his hand under Wang Shenqiu's gaze. Then, he raised his head and smiled. Dad, maybe we won't have to wait until next year. When he saw Wang Teng's smile, Wang Shenqiu knew that his son was listening to what he just said. But why did he feel like scolding him upon hearing his words? He couldn't help but laugh and say, it's good to have confidence, but please don't act in front of your father, your little brat. He didn't believe that Wang Teng was able to pass his university entrance exam this year. This child is getting naughtier and naughtier. Li Xiaomei took the coat on the clothing rack and passed it to Wang Shenqiu as she complained sweetly. I won't be arranging a driver for you today. You can drive or take public transport. It's up to you. Wang Shenqiu took over the coat and left the house. Wang Teng was speechless. Was he very worrying in the past? His father always asked someone to fetch him to school and escort him home afterward, fearing that he would fool around outside. He shook his head and bade farewell to his mother. Mom, I've finished eating. I will be leaving. Okay. Be careful on the way. Wang Teng drove his car and reached Donghai No. 1 High School in 20 minutes. He found a space to park his car and started walking towards his classroom. Well, if he remembered correctly, he should be in Year 3 Class 8. The Year 3 classroom building. Most of the students here seemed to be in a hurry. The atmosphere here was much tenser than the classroom buildings for Year 1 and Year 2. When he reached his classroom, Many students were already studying hard. Most of them moved their lips as they silently recited their textbooks. They didn't make any sound to avoid disturbing others. Wang Teng's arrival seemed highly conspicuous in the quiet classroom. A few students raised their heads with a tinge of surprise in their gazes. But, they didn't think too much. This rich second generation probably woke up early accidentally. He will most likely resume his usual late arrivals tomorrow. These few thoughts flashed through the minds of several students in unplanned unison. They hurriedly lowered their heads and continued what they were doing after that. When Wang Teng walked into the classroom, his eyes suddenly lit up. Attribute bubbles. A few bubbles had dropped beside a few students. He watched as one of the female students silently recited her textbook and a small bubble appeared on her lips. As she continued, the bubble slowly became bigger. Then, it dropped on the floor with a splat. She really looked like a goldfish blowing bubbles. Wang Teng was in a trance. You could drop bubbles when you are studying. He always thought that only martial arts had attributes. From the looks of it, that wasn't the case. He walked over calmly and collected the attributes. Language *10. English *15. Biology *12. Chemistry *15. The next moment, Wang Teng smiled. A second ago, he was still worried that he wouldn't be able to study well. Now, the study attributes came like rain in a drought. His bug was really amazing. After he collected the attributes, relevant knowledge started appearing in his mind. He felt as though he had learned all of this before. They had merged into his memory and would never disappear. Wang Teng sat down beside the lady that blew the bubble just now. Indeed, this was Wang Teng's table buddy. This lady was their class monitor, Lin Chuhan. She came from a normal family, but she was an ultimate star student. She had the chance to enter the top universities in China. One was a rich second generation who couldn't study, while the other was an average civilian who was a star student. By right, there was no way these two people could sit together. But, their head teacher, Fan Weiming, arranged their seating like this. He claimed that he did this so that the good student could teach her poor fellow classmate. Hence, the best student, Lin Chuhan, had to teach the worst student, Wang Teng. Old Fan's unexpected move almost caused all the students in the class to sprain their backs. He wasn't afraid that this would affect Lin Chuhan and the star student might go astray because of Wang Teng. There was a chance that she could enter the best university in the country. Of course, Lin Chuhan's appearance was another reason why everyone was filled with righteous indignation. This was such a good and pretty little flower. Old Fan was committing a crime by placing her beside such an unworthy person. Unfortunately, no one dared to voice out their anger. Wang Teng was a rich second generation who would be inheriting hundreds of millions of assets in the future. They couldn't afford to offend him. However, everyone was surprised by Wang Teng. Although he was incompetent in his studies, he didn't disturb Lin Chuhan. They had been table buddies for more than a year, and Lin Chuhan's results remained the same. She was always number one, never dropping in rank. Also, because of Wang Teng, many male students didn't dare to disturb Lin Chuhan. This gave her a quiet learning environment. Who knew that this might be a blessing in disguise? Wang Teng looked at Lin Chuhan, and a memory floated into his mind. He was just starting his year 3 in high school. One night, Wang Shenqiu suddenly told Wang Teng proudly, "Son, I gave some gifts to your head teacher so that he will arrange the best student to sit beside you. You should learn from her properly." "That's right. Don't bully the young lady. If I know, I will break your leg. Do you understand?" Wang Teng was frozen on the spot when he heard this piece of news. Especially when he saw old Wang's proud expression, he felt speechless. "You place the prettiest lady in school beside me, but you don't allow me to touch her. Are you my biological father? This is too cruel." Despite complaining, Wang Teng didn't dare disobey Wang Shenkuo. Hence, he remained as Lin Chuhan's obedient and good table buddy for a year. Part 1 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.